Chapter 175 Fire. Inside the ball of light, something seemed to break. A flame seemed to jump out of the ball of light. In the blink of an eye, the ball of light became a ball of pure golden yellow flame spitting in the air. The ball of fire quickly collapsed into itself, and the house-sized ball shrinking into a flame the size of a fist. Even though the flame was now the size of a fist, an extremely young and extremely strong presence emanated from it. Zhuo was affected, and his finger motion stumbled. Luckily, the formation had already been completed. The flame's presence made Pu Yao furrow his brows. He wore an expression of disgust. "I'm very curious how you are planning to deal with this." Pu Yao glanced at the flame before looking towards Zhuo. "Do you want to absorb it? I'm warning you, this golden crow fire is not something you can tolerate." "No, I'm not planning on absorbing it." Zhuo shook his head. Pu Yao wasn't wrong. Sensing the strong presence radiating from the golden crow fire, he understood this wasn't something he could absorb at the moment. The amount of golden crow fire in the golden crow pill was just a thread, so it was not hard to absorb, but this ball of golden crow fire was pure and strong, beyond what he could endure. If he was a Ningmai, it would be a wonderful fire seed. This answer was not out of Pu Yao's expectations. He gave a scornful expression. "You made all this noise and got this little ball of flame. So now what, do you want to use it for a barbecue?" Staring at the burning golden yellow flame at the center of the formation, Zhuo licked his lips, his eyes like a hungry wolf staring at a lamb. "So this is golden crow fire. So what? You can't use it." Pu Yao said scornfully, like he always did. "Your formation can only be maintained for 5 days at most, and then this ball of golden crow fire would naturally dissipate. Do you want to forge it into Lingdan?" "No, I changed my mind." Zhuo's eyes were fixed on the fist-size golden crow fire. I'll sell fire. Directly sell golden crow fire." The light in Zhuo's eyes grew, like the blinding light produced by countless Jingshi. He waved his arms, his voice filled with excitement and joy. "I'll split this golden crow fire into a few dozen fires, seal them in jade boxes with a formation, and sell them." Pu Yao had to agree that Zhuo's idea was interesting. However, he glanced at the ball of golden crow fire and said, "You can divide this, you know the formations to seal it?" "Don't ask me, the methods I know, you can't use it, even I can't use it at present." "That's a problem," Zhuo said. He didn't answer and sunk deep into thought. Pu Yao did not disturb him. It had to be said that if Zhuo's method really worked, then the business opportunity in here was astounding. 4th-grade golden crow fire did not lack for demand. Right now, he was tied together with Zhuo. Only if Zhuo had Jingshi could he spend it. Even more, his nether pool was still lacking all of the materials needed to complete it. The black water was uselessly sitting in the middle of nowhere. The damage accumulated over a few thousand years, it could not be repaired so easily. However, troubled times were coming. He liked that. Zhuo entered a period of mania. If he could solve this problem, heavens! The Jingshi. None of the business that Zhuo had done before could rival this one. He seemed to see a great pathway made of Jingshi in front of him. Any piece that he could chip off was 4th grade. The thoughts of Jingshi did not mess up Zhuo's mind. Quite the opposite, he was full of excitement and motivation. At this time, if a Ningmai came, no, even a Jin Dan, then Zhuo would howl and charge to chop the other into pieces. 5 days, the macro golden crow formation could only be maintained for 5 days. Zhuo didn't bear to waste one blink. The 4th day. Zhuo held the jade box in his hand and roared with laughter. Pu Yao came with the noise. Success. Looking at the concern on Pu Yao's face, Zhuo was smug. He roared with laughter again. He definitely succeeded. The formations he studied came from the Kunlun introductory formation jade scroll. This jade scroll, which Mo thought could also be called the Encyclopedia of Basic Formations, had all kinds of fundamental formations and naturally included formations to seal things. What Mo picked was a formation called mini-lock formation. It was suitable for sealing in items that were intangible. Naturally, a mere second-grade formation like the mini-lock formation was not enough. Golden Crow Fire was fourth grade. Even if it was split into a dozen parts and weakened greatly, it was still not something a mini-lock formation could seal. Using the mini-lock formation as a basis, Mo had thought of ways to strengthen it. His original intention had been to try to strengthen the mini-lock formation, but he had not been able to find an appropriate method. Incidentally, of the micro-formations he had discovered, he found an unique formation. Its purpose was very strange. It could suppress medicinal power. Usually, it was used in Lingdan that were quite domineering. It would suppress the medicinal power so the medicinal power would slowly enter the channels without damaging them. This was an unexpected, happy surprise for Mo. Without strengthening the formation, he could suppress the Golden Crow Fire. It was the same. It did not take him too long to merge the two formations. Mo named the new formation the Mini Seal. The Mini Seal was put on a palm-sized jade box. Mo used the best jade that he had for the box, third-grade icy jade, and called it a mini box. Embedded on each jade box were 9 pieces of third-grade jingsher to provide ling power for the Mini Seal. In one go, he forged almost 100 jade boxes. Just the value of one of these jade boxes alone was not low. If it wasn't that they were to be used to containing the Golden Crow Fire, Mo couldn't bear to have used such good ice jade to make simple jade boxes. Looking at the attractive appearance of the mini box, Mo decided to raise the price of the Golden Crow Fire. Anyone that was able to buy the Golden Crow Fire, they wouldn't care about spending another few dozen more jingsher. Pu Yao thought it was too early to be happy. He reminded Mo, what about dividing the fire? Just keep on watching. It was rare that he could show off in front of Pu Yao. Mo deliberately concealed his plan. However, when Mo faced that fist-sized ball of Golden Crow Fire, he pushed all thoughts of showing off to the back of his mind. The pure golden yellow Golden Crow Fire was a true sovereign. Silently burning, it was like the king of lions unconcernedly smoothing its fur. Each time the flame jumped and spat, an oppressive presence would ripple into the surroundings. With Mo's cultivation, if it wasn't that his spirit was strong enough, he wouldn't even be able to stand up against this Golden Crow Fire. A benefit of a strong spirit was that his mind was very stable, and not easily affected by outside factors. He didn't start dividing the fire immediately, but hammered many large metal nails around the Golden Crow Fire. These nails were longer than a chi, about the thickness of 3 fingers. Cinnabar character seals could be seen glistening on the body of the nails. These were metal nails that were commonly used in formations. Being second grade, they were useful for many formations. Mo embedded a dozen metal nails. Standing and taking a breath, he hung the streaming fire core manipulation pendant on his waist to increase his control over fire. However, the method he used this time wasn't one that was used to control fire. He inhaled heavily, his chest rising, his eyes bulging as his hands suddenly started to whirl. Bam! A suddenly explosion sounded without a warning. The floating ball of Golden Crow Fire suddenly shook, as though it was alarmed. Explosions sounded, one after the other. After just one round, and Mo's heart tightened. It seemed it was more difficult than he had thought. However, he didn't have the time to think more. His hands continuously increased their speed. Pia pia pia. The explosions became more rushed and close together, the shaking of the Golden Crow Fire increased. Mo's forehead was covered in sweat, steam rising off like smoke. His eyes were filled with blood and widened greatly. The 10 fingers on his hands twirled so fast that it was as if they were a ball of shadows. If someone happened upon this scene, they would be unable to clearly see his fingers. The shaking golden crow fire convulsed erratically, and could collapse at any moment. The fierce and pure presence of the fire was completely sent out. Like a flood, it furiously pushed at everything in the surroundings. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks continued to appear on the jade pieces of the macro golden crow formation. The formation was going to collapse. If Mo did not successfully divide the fire, the golden crow fire would instantly disappear. Without the support of the formation, the golden crow fire would dissipate quickly. The tendons on Mo's forehead bulged like green earthworms. Open. His voice was like spring thunder, his hands suddenly turning with power he never had before. Boom! The golden crow fire exploded, turning to dozens of thumb-sized flames. The fierce presence that Mo felt afraid of instantly became much weaker. The alarming cracking sounds also stopped. The moment before the large formation collapsed, Mo successfully divided the fire and the formation managed to stay whole. This way, he received precious time to breathe. Mo panted furiously, his arms sagged as if they were filled with lead, unable to be raised. But in his eyes, there was only joy. Success. He really did it. Pu Yao gaped. The method Mo used was completely out of his expectations. Mo actually used the method to divide Dan. During Dan making, after the raw materials were added, medicinal fluid would take form, and this fluid would become Ling Dan in the end. However, the number of Ling Dan that would be produced from a single cauldron would depend on the skill of the Dan maker dividing the Dan. Skilled Dan makers could produce more than 100 Ling Dan from each cauldron. For low-level Ling Dan, if they were made one by one, the time needed could not be imagined. Dan dividing was then one of the techniques that those who studied Dan making had to learn. However, Pu Yao never would have imagined that Mo would use the strange method of Dan dividing to divide fire. This guy. He looked at Mo. When some feeling returned to his hand, a bottle of Ling Dan appeared on Mo's hand. Removing the cork, he shoved all of the contents into his mouth. He didn't have the time to resolve the medicinal power, so he used sheer quantity as a substitute. After one bottle of Ling Dan was consumed, he felt much better. But the medicinal power of one entire bottle. Mo quickly experienced the after-effects. The Ling power that suddenly exploded in his body was like a flood bursting through a dam, rushing through his body. Damn it! Mo's face twisted. However, he didn't have the time to slowly absorb the Ling Dan. He quickly took out the mini boxes and started to harvest the golden crow fire seeds. Quickly, he had sealed all the golden crow fire, but the Ling power in his body did not show any signs of exhaustion. He had calculated wrong. Compared to the astounding consumption of before, the Ling power used to harvest was pitifully little. Pu Yao was laughing at him from the side. Just when Mo felt he would explode and die, suddenly, someone quickly flew over, their voice filled with terror. Shi Xiang, there's trouble. Trouble. Chapter 176, Brute Strength. What is it? Mo gritted his teeth as he forced the words out one by one through his teeth. He was putting all he could into suppressing the Ling power that was rushing through his body. Damn it! His Ling power was like a wild beast that was caught, furiously struggling, furiously charging around to try to break through the layer of imprisonment. But his state was not betrayed by Mo's zombie face. There's a blue-spiked crocodile that suddenly charged out of the water. It wounded one of the Shixiangs. The disciple's expression was one of panic, but his speech was relatively clear. Go! Mo spat out through his teeth. He just took one step, and the Ling power in his body shuddered. He staggered. The restless Ling power in his body made him jump. Disregarding the mocking laughter from Pu Yao inside his sea of consciousness, he hurriedly activated his Vajra Profound Sutra. Pei Yuan Ran and the others would never have thought that the Vajra Profound Sutra they had intended to suppress had been instead become well developed. It could not be suppressed and progressed extremely quickly. The fine sword essences inside the formation had been like sandpaper that continuously ground against Zhuo body. The Vajra Profound Sutra was greatly stimulated and naturally circulated on its own. In half a year, Zhuo was only one step away from the 5th level. Silently using the scripture of the Vajra Profound Sutra, the sense of danger from the energy inside his body lessened. He released a sigh of relief. His entire body was dark gold, a natural fierce presence exuding by itself. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's expression suddenly became angry. A bloody light flashed through his eye. Staring at the gravestone, a cold voice floated from the corner of his mouth, "I hadn't thought that you would steal in front of me again." However, Zhuo gritted his teeth, his steps fast as he sprinted with the shitty that came with the message. From long away, he saw the troublemaking blue-spiked crocodile. It was idly lying on the beach, disregarding the Wukong sword sect disciples that was surrounding it. However, the moment Zhuo appeared, it suddenly raised its head and opened its eyes. The eyes of the blue-spiked crocodile were like needles, cold and without a hint of warmth. Saliva slipped out of the corner of its mouth with dense teeth. Its body was covered in black and shiny armor, and it was easy to see from a glance that it would be hard to wound even with a flying sword. On its back was a row of blue spikes the width of an infant's fist. They were very good primary materials for making flying swords, and were also the crocodile's life-saving weapon. The entire body of the blue-spiked crocodile was treasure, but not many people were willing to kill it. It was truly a brutish existence. Zhuo's eyes turned to the blood-soaked and injured right leg of the shitty. It was like a spark had been thrown into a barrel of dynamite. The Ling power in his body exploded and went berserk. Without a second word, his hands held the water-drop sword. One step, his body was like an arrow. Everyone felt their eyes blur, and Zhuo appeared beside the blue-spiked crocodile. The body of the water-drop sword was covered by a water flame. The flame was silently burning, not as grand and shocking as the water-shaped flame of the past. "Die!" Zhuo shouted. His body was seemingly made of gold, his eyes wide. The water-drop sword went from bottom to up. Li water burning heavens. The first attack was his killing move. The rampaging Ling power in his body furiously flooded through the water-drop sword in his hand. What was strange was the water-shaped flame on the water-drop sword did not grow, but became even more transparent. His sword essence, after going through the sword essence formation, was much more pure and introverted than before. The blue-spiked crocodile's reputation was clearly preceded by the extraordinary nature. Its body moved, and the steel-like tail whipped horizontally. With a piercing howl, it launched itself forward. One tail and one sword clashed together. Bam! The explosive sword essence of the Li water burning heavens seemed to have found a vent when it came into contact, and exploded. At the same time, a domineering and powerful force passed from the water-drop sword to Zhuo's hands. Zhuo felt his palms shake. The water-drop sword had almost been thrown out of his hands. If he let go at this time, he definitely would be wounded, and the water-drop sword would most likely fly far away from the current battle. Without a flying sword, how could he face the blue-spiked crocodile? There was no time to think. Using all his strength, his hands gripped tightly on the hilt of the water-drop sword. A strong force passed from his palm to his arms to his entire body. The Ling power that was rampaging through his body paused with this sweep of the blue-spiked crocodile. It could be seen just how strong his foe was. After retreating for more than 10 strides, Zhuo finally steadied his body. Inside he was shocked. The blue-spiked crocodile had also received some significant wounds. Its tail was ripped open, bleeding, the wound cut down to the bone. The combined offensive power of the Vajra Profound Sutra, and the Li Water Burning Heavens, could be seen. However, what Suemo had not expected was that the wounds would be unable of causing the blue-spiked crocodile to feel fear. Instead it had aroused its viciousness. The eyes of the blue-spiked crocodile stared fixedly at Suemo. A vicious and brutal aura tightly locked onto Suemo. Its long body shook and waved like a fish in the water. It was astounding fast as it charged at Suemo. Suemo only saw a black shadow leaping at him. Without time to think, he channeled Vajra Profound Sutra to its maximum. His eyes were bright gold and a golden light was shining from his body. His hand held the water drop sword. The water flame on the sword was so transparent it was almost non-existent. Li Water Burning Heavens. Bang! A sound of impact that was even deeper and more terrifying than the previous one that resounded out. The energy inside Suemo's body roiled. He could not stop his body. Bam bam bam, he went back 7 steps. Just having steadied himself, the blue-spiked crocodile leapt forward again. The mouth of the crocodile was like an enormous set of clamps, its 2 rows of sharp teeth were frightening. The water drop sword that Suemo swept upwards just barely managed to block the enormous teeth of the blue-spiked crocodile. The bloody maw of the blue-spiked crocodile was so clear in Suemo's eyes. He was even able to see the remaining blood and flesh inside the mouth. A fishy smell flooded his face. Right after, he felt his surroundings blur. Like a sandbag, he was thrown more than 10 jong away, stopping only when he had crashed into a tree. Suemo stood up. With the Vajra Profound Sutra present, he wasn't wounded. He widened his eyes, staring motionlessly at the blue-spiked crocodile. The berserk Ling power inside his body affected Suemo's mood. He was like an infuriated beast, all his thoughts thrown to the back of his head. In his eyes, there was only this blue-spiked crocodile. There was one thought in his head: kill it. The blue-spiked crocodile shook its head. It had not succeeded with the last 2 charges. It was slightly dizzy. However, Suemo's following actions provoked it again. Such a small being dared to challenge it. Seeing the blue-spiked crocodile charge at him, Suemo bared his teeth, his eyes dark. His feet trotting, his hands held the sword at his side as he sped up. A black figure and a golden figure smashed together like 2 meteorites. Boom! A thunderous explosion. The black figure and the now blue blur bounced off of each other, the 2 moving backwards with even greater speed. Bam bam bam. Suemo was thrown like a sandbag, hitting the ground and bouncing up, then hitting the ground and bouncing up. After bouncing more than 7 times, he finally managed to stop. After being thrown so violently, his eyes were dizzy. After a moment, he struggled up, and spat out a mouthful of sand. The last impact was much stronger than the previous ones. His skeleton felt as though it was going to collapse. The Ling power that was exploding inside his body had almost dissipated. Panting, he thought inside that the bastard should be pretty much done. Suddenly, his eyes focused. Nearby, that blue-spiked crocodile shook its head, staring with its eyes as it moved to charge. Seeing the blue-spiked crocodile, the anger inside Suemo's heart rose. If GE can't kill you today, then GE will change my surname to you. I, die. Suemo gritted his teeth. He held the water drop sword, started his trot again and charged at the blue-spiked crocodile. The blue-spiked crocodile shook its head, howled once, and turned to a black shadow, leaping at Suemo. Bam! It was another simple crash. 1 person and 1 crocodile thrown back again. With the fierce reputation of the blue-spiked crocodile, the news that there was a blue-spiked crocodile on the desolate wood reef, and that it had wounded one of the disciples instantly attracted the attention of all the disciples of Wukong's sword sect. They were all very worried. If a blue-spiked crocodile appeared on the desolate wood reef, that meant that any one of them could fall victim to the danger it posed. All the disciples ran over. Going to ask for help from Zhuo was their unconscious response. An adult blue-spiked crocodile was a fourth-grade beast. Normally even Ningmai could only skirt around it if they encountered it. Maybe Shixiang would have a solution, set up a formation to trap it and then they could think of a way. But the scene in front of them stunned everyone. In the rumors, wasn't Shixiang only skilled in formations? Seeing the person and crocodile irrationally collide together, continuously, repeatedly, robotically crash together. The golden Shixiang charged again and again, and was bounced back again and again before he climbed up over and over like nothing had happened, his face dusty, and he roared as he charged again. Seeing the blue-spiked crocodile howling furiously, not showing exhaustion after hitting for so many collisions. Everyone felt fear because the blue-spiked crocodile was so strong. If they were in an encounter with it, but that kind of apprehension surprised no one. It was a blue-spiked crocodile. But Shixiang was also this strong. Was this a delusion? But the increasing number of wounds on the body of the blue-spiked crocodile reminded them that everything happening in front of them was reality. Every time Shixiang's sword impacted the blue-spiked crocodile, the vibrating Ling power was enough to make them jump, make them uncontrollably feel terror. Is Shixiang truly just a Zhuji? Chun Yucheng said to himself. Standing beside him was Gongsun Cha. The clean and scholarly Gongsun Cha was strangely excited. Doesn't look like it. Shixiang and the blue-spiked crocodile have gone 22 rounds. A Zhuji definitely wouldn't be able to stand for such a long period of time. He couldn't help but praise, it really is such beautiful brutality that one cannot help but be intoxicated. After going straight for 22 rounds, Zhuo's mind was blank, instinctively climbing up, and instinctively charging. He didn't realize that the rampaging Ling power in his body was continuously scattered, gathered, and then continuously scattered before gathering again. The countless pieces of scattered Ling power spread into his limbs and organs, into his tendons and blood. These scattered Ling power went through every possible crevice. Of the enormous amount of Ling power inside Zhuo's body, over half was dissipated into different parts of his body. A change was quietly occurring. At this moment, Pu Yao suddenly raised his head in the sea of consciousness, mountain physique, Zhuo means left, so he is going to change his name to the opposite of what it is now, right or you? Brian, Zhuo mo umo lol. Chapter 177, Business. As Pu Yao muttered under his breath, Zhuo mo, who once again had been thrown to the dirt again, detected the change in his own body. Struggling to climb up, he didn't howl and charge like he did the previous few times. A bucket of cold water seemed to have been thrown on Zhuo's hot head, causing him to wake up. His desire for battle that had been burning dissipated. He looked down at his hand. At some unknown time a mountain-shaped tattoo appeared on his palms. What was this? As Zhuo bent down to examine his palms, the hearts of the onlooking disciples stumbled a beat. Did Shixiang not have enough energy? The last 20-something crashes had made their hearts shake and pulled their hearts into the air. They didn't even dare to blink. They didn't understand why Shixiang would use such a brutal method of fighting. If he lost, there was no chance of survival. The brutality of the blue-spiked crocodile was known by everyone present. This time Shixiang stood up and didn't charge like he had before, everyone thought it worrisome. When the green-spiked crocodile charged at Shixiang again, Shixiang was still standing motionlessly. Their expressions all changed. Shixiang had no more energy. Oh! Almost all the disciples used their strongest moves, hoping they could help block for Shixiang for a while. Countless lights flashed, ling hose, herb cutters, skinning knives, flew into the air, each with their own unique color. But they were all production shouja. They usually never practiced any attacks. Their panicked and fumbling offense didn't even strike the shadow of the blue-spiked crocodile. Seeing the blue-spiked crocodile about to ram into Shixiang, many disciples didn't bear to watch. It was possible to see from the aftershocks of Shixiang's previous attacks just how strong the blue-spiked crocodile was. One charge was enough to break rock. If one didn't defend, there was only one outcome, to be split into pieces. If Shixiang was not here, with their own strength, how could they survive on the desolate wood reef? Without the protection of the big formation, they were like a herd of sheep left to the wolves. Everyone's heart sunk. They were finished. At this time, Zuomo raised his head. The blue-spiked crocodile was 10 steps away from him. Its speed was so fast, it appeared as a series of after-images. The oncoming presence was so strong it was suffocating. A ball of gold light burst out of Zuomo's eyes as he raised his head. He suddenly raised both of his hands, his left leg moving back into an arched position. When he finished this move, the sharp teeth of the blue-spiked crocodile just perfectly touched the two palms he held up. The palms, which now appeared to be made from dark gold, and the pale and wretched-smelling crocodile teeth smashed together. Boom! Air swirled and shook. Ripples visible to the naked eye suddenly spread from the point the palm and teeth collided. The golden pair of hands did not move. From extreme movement to extreme stillness, the blow it dealt to the bystanders could not be rivaled. The talismans flying in the sky all stopped. Chen Yuqing, Gongsun Cha and the others looked in disbelief at this picture, this extremely strange scene. They forgot to control their talismans, not realizing that all their talismans had fallen to the ground. Zuomo's eyes turned entirely dark gold, the light rippling inside, cold and unfeeling. He felt that his body was full of strength right now. Strength that he never possessed before. His legs that were standing on the ground seemed connected with the great earth, he seemed to be together with the earth, endless power streamed into his body. Confidence grew strongly in him. He believed that even if there was a mountain, he could rip it open. The powerful charge of the angered spiked crocodile did not cause his hands to shake the tiniest bit. His left hand flowed along to grab the two fangs protruding out of the blue-spiked crocodile, his right hand forming a blade and suddenly slicing against the head of the blue-spiked crocodile. Pia! The golden palm was like a sharp gold knife, but the sound of impact was as if a 10,000 catty hammer had struck the head of the blue-spiked crocodile. The skin of the blue-spiked crocodile, that even flying swords were unable to damage, didn't break but the flesh under its skin vibrated like drums. The eyes of the blue-spiked crocodile suddenly expanded. Then, like a pile of wet mud, it stopped moving and dropped to the ground. Zuomo carelessly threw the blue-spiked crocodile to one side, not even looking at it. He closed his eyes, slowly recalling and savoring this strange and wonderful feeling. His body was like a mountain, connected to the earth. A heavy strength passed from the earth into his body, he felt every joint of his body was filled with strength. He slowly experienced this state, but this feeling of connectedness with the earth quickly disappeared from his body. Only when he couldn't feel it anymore did he open his eyes. His heart was full of longing. The feeling of strength was really wonderful. Opening his palms, the mountain tattoos were so faint they were almost invisible. Zuomo did not have too many regrets. He knew that had just been a moment of comprehension at a time of breakthrough. This kind of state could not last for a long time. But since he had passed this barrier, as long as he persisted and worked hard, there would be a day when he would reach that level. It might have been the shock of leveling up, but his joy at killing the blue-spiked crocodile was very faint. Before he left, he only said, "Gongsun Shidi, take care of it." After he left, everyone still had not come out of their shock. The last scene was truly too stunning, too fantastical. They felt their minds were a blank, not knowing what to say. After a while, Gongsun Cha, who had recovered first, ran to the corpse of the blue-spiked crocodile and flipped it. After a while, he said, "Way too strong. Way too strong." Hearing this, the other people also crowded over, surrounding the corpse of the blue-spiked crocodile. Even the wounded disciple did not care about his pain, running over in curiosity. Dead. Completely dead. A blue-spiked crocodile is 4th grade. Xixiang can even kill a 4th grade blue-spiked crocodile, we don't need to worry anymore. Worry? Have I ever worried? Anyways, isn't there also the big formation? Right, why didn't Xixiang use the big formation? Does Xixiang need to use the formation? Everyone chatted, unable to disguise the excitement on their faces. Chen Yucheng and Gongsun Cha had amiable relations. He saw that Gongsun Cha had a face full of awe and couldn't resist asking, "What are you seeing?" Seeing Gongsun Cha's expression, he knew that this guy definitely wasn't just excited that Xixiang had killed the blue-spiked crocodile. Way too brutal. Gongsun Cha's voice was excited, his gaze blazing, everything inside this blue-spiked crocodile, all the bones, muscles, organs, they have all been shattered to pieces. Chen Yuqing jumped, no way. Looking at the untouched outer layer of the blue-spiked crocodile, he could not imagine that the inside of this being was completely shattered. This was a 4th grade blue-spiked crocodile. Gongsun Cha shook his head and commented, "It is a waste of this blue-spiked crocodile. Only the teeth, skin, eyes, and the spikes can be used. The organs of a blue-spiked crocodile are very valuable." Chen Yuqing did not hear Gongsun Cha's words. He had floated off in his thoughts. Chen Yuqing suddenly felt the usually low-key Xixiang was full of mystery and could not be understood. He did not know much about formations, but he had heard of the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation before. He didn't find it surprising that Xixiang could kill Nan Mingzi with it, since Xixiang was able to get 3rd in the sword test conference relying on it. But when Xixiang took out the beast pool, he completely lost all resistance. The temptation was just too much. The beast pool was due to the animal-keeping remnant scroll, but where did this astounding power come from? The sect didn't have this kind of scripture. Without knowing it, he felt awe. When Zuoyamo went back to his residence and had just sat down, Pu Yao appeared. "What did I just do?" Zuoyamo asked. "Don't know, I'm not familiar with body cultivation." Pu Yao shook his head. Zuoyamo rolled his eyes. He didn't believe it. However, if Pu Yao didn't want to say it, there was no way around it. "Let's do some business. Are you interested?" "Not interested." Zuoyamo decisively shook his head. His previous experience with Pu Yao told him that he would only lose and never make a profit. "Don't refuse so quickly." Pu Yai said, "Amuse fly." His 2 eyes narrowed into 2 bloody crescents. "Haven't you been trying to make a sword formation? I'll teach you a technique to use your consciousness. You can easily use the sword formation." Oh, Zuoyamo was not persuaded. This is a secret method. It is called the Great Thousand Leaf Hands. Even though your spiritual power isn't low, your technique is terrible and fail to really express the power. The Great Thousand Leaf Hands can fill in a gap. Oh, Zuoyamo was still not persuaded. The spirit as a vine and the leaves as hands, it can easily make many transformations. Your one hand can do many things. When you have 1,000 hands, how can anyone defend against you? Brute strength is useless. Even you sword shio fight with swords, no one will let you in for close combat. That thing has no future. Your spirit is the right path. The path of heaven is a wheel, you cannot control it but you can move it. You said it yourself. Yao, Mo, Xiuzhe, each have their own advantages. Pu Yao paused. Then he acted as he hadn't heard Zuomo's words. "Oh, I could also teach you, little thousand-leaf hands." The Great Thousand-Leaf Hands emphasize invisibility and cooperation with your formations. The Little Thousand-Leaf Hands has 36 moves. There are 3 that you could learn to defend yourself. Even if you are just in Juji, you don't need to worry about a Ningmai. Oh, Zuoyamo was not moved, Pu Yao's actions were way out of the norm. Demons only appear when something was amiss. This guy was the most demon-like of all demons. Oh, if you agree, starting from today, other than the expenses for the nether pool, I won't take one more jingsher. Just like how well Zhuo Mo knew Pu Yao was clear about Zhuo Mo's weaknesses. He gently threw out a condition that Zhuo Mo could not refuse. As expected, Zhuo Mo instantly couldn't keep sitting. Really? Really? Then what do you need? Your blood. Pu Yao's smile was extremely malicious. Zhuo Mo's expression changed. He decisively shook his head. No. Was he joking? If he didn't have jingsher, he could make more. If he lost his little life, he didn't have a spare. He didn't dare to joke around with his little life. Pu Yao saw Zhuo Mo's thoughts with a glance. Don't worry, it won't affect your body. You do body cultivation, your vital blood is very abundant. It won't be much to take some blood. I don't need much, 1 drop a day. 1 drop a day is nothing to you. No. Zhuo Mo persisted in refusing. Chapter 178, Void Pass, just 1 drop of blood. You are not willing to even pay this insignificant price? Pu Yao said, his brow furrowing in discontent. Insignificant? Zhuo Mo's voice was full of displeasure. Taking blood from me is insignificant. He then said decisively, this is not negotiable. Jingsher and talismans, how can they compare with my little life? Pu Yao propped his chin and thought momentarily before he said, how about this? I won't take your vital blood, but you have to give me the earth energy you get every day. Earth energy? Zhuo Mo was still for a moment, but he replied quickly. In his mind, he instantly connected it to the feeling of connectedness to the earth when he had been fighting with the blue-spiked crocodile. There was a problem. Pu Yao was very cunning. This was his goal. What is earth energy? He asked, knowing the result. But Pu Yao was a Yao thousands of years old. Even though Zhuo Mo tried to conceal it, the intelligent Pu Yao could find hints from the slight changes in his eyes. Pu Yao smiled, not disguising it. Mo have always thought that the great earth is the mother of all things. The power of the great earth is stronger than anything else. When they cultivate, they always attend to their communication to the earth. You just have broken through to the first level of body cultivation. This level is called mountain physique. The level of mountain physique, you can now communicate with the great earth. As long as your feet are on the ground, you will have endless strength. Zhuo Mo listened carefully. Of course, that crowd of idiot Mo doesn't understand anything profound. This method is simple and straightforward, very easy to start. Mo also descend from wild beasts. Compared to Xiuzhe, they naturally are more connected with the earth. It is easy for them to start this method. But you, it is very unexpected to me that you have such talent in body cultivation. Earth energy is the power that comes from the earth? Zhuo Mo asked in response. Oh, it's not incorrect if you understand it that way, Pu Yao nodded. If I give the earth energy to you, that means my mountain physique would not progress. Zhuo Mo continued. He wasn't stupid. Right, Pu Yao continued to nod, calmly admitting it. No. Zhuo Mo shook his head. Pu Yao was puzzled, why not? The mountain physique might be said to have the power of 10,000 elephants, but usually, it is very stupid. It is not even as effective as your sword formation. It's as far from the great thousand-leaf hands, and little thousand-leaf hands. There's also so much jingsher, why don't you agree? Zhuo Mo smirked, I don't even know the power of the great thousand-leaf hands, and little thousand-leaf hands, yet, but I've personally experienced the power of the mountain physique. It is a very simple choice. Hearing this, Pu Yao was speechless. He had neglected the practicality of Zhuo Mo. However, to a Sky Yao that was thousands of years old, what problem would this pose? He quickly thought of a solution. If that's the case, this is very simple. The Great Thousand Leaf Hands is split into 7 chapters. You are only able to cultivate 1 chapter. Of the Little Thousand Leaf Hands, you are only able to practice 3 moves. I'll let you see half of the chapter of Great Thousand Leaf Hands, and teach you a move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, for free. Definitely free, no additional conditions, Pu Yao promised. Okay, then give it, Sui Mo said unconcernedly. In his heart, he had already decided that this time he would get one over Pu Yao. Freely learning half a chapter of Great Thousand Leaf Hands, and 1 move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, then he would tell Pu Yao he still wouldn't agree, haha. Thinking how frustrated Pu Yao would be, he felt very good. Pu Yao didn't waste words, throwing the first half chapter of Great Thousand Leaf Hands to Sui Mo naturally did not refuse. As he daydreamed about Pu Yao's upcoming rage, he read the half chapter of Great Thousand Leaf Hands. After a few short words, and Sui Mo's indifference flew away. He sunk into the text. Compared to the cryptic nature of embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, the half chapter of Great Thousand Leaf Hands was easy to understand, like a genius asking and responding to their own questions. It headed straight for the main topic right at the start, first describing how to control power. Mo used their body as a tool, continuously tempering it and their power turning inside. With their action, they could destroy mountains and upturn oceans. Xiuzha primarily practiced Ling power. Ling power stored within their bodies would be guided by their channels and was easy to use. Spiritual power was invisible, spread outside the body, controlled by the mind, but the difficulty to use it was high. Even though Yao were born knowing how to use their spiritual power, but there were different proficiency levels. High-level Yao could control the world with just a thought. After that was a mountain of questions regarding the consciousness. Sui Mo's mind was deeply enchanted. Many of the questions in here were problems that had dogged him for a long time which he could not solve. His gaze unconsciously went down. This author replied to each of the questions. Their language was extremely simple to understand. Sui Mo felt as though a mist had been lifted. The last conclusion it had was the consciousness was like a ball of mist, lacking a skeleton which caused it to become difficult to control. Mo primarily cultivated their body, their entire skeleton, flesh, blood, and skin were pathways, easy to control. What spiritual power lacked was exactly this kind of pathways. They were naturally spread out. Only some high-level Yao had Yao seeds that could naturally function as base pathways. That was also why they were so powerful. The Yao did not lack for geniuses. They might not have had highly regarded bloodlines, but they could create new paths. This, Great Thousand Leaf Hands, originated as one of these new paths. Like vine creating a net, 1 leaf per section, the leaf like a hand, 5 finger-like segments able to do tens of thousands of changes. Sui Mo was drunk. He had never heard of this method before. It was very novel. Sui Mo was not a Yao. Pu Yao had embedded a Yao seed and caused his control to increase, but that was nothing compared to the Great Thousand Leaf Hands. It was on a completely different level. If he could successfully learn the Great Thousand Leaf Hands, any formation would be able to reach its greatest potential in his hands. Other than that, it was also useful for forging and dan-making. Just as Sui Mo hurried to keep reading, he suddenly stopped. The chapter half was finished. It was like an itch that being scratched in that sweet spot and then the other suddenly stopped. He felt unspeakably uncomfortable. Damn it! Why did it stop there? Sui Mo, who had been waiting to see Pu Yao frustrated, deeply felt what frustration was. No, he needed to control himself, he couldn't let Pu Yao win. Sui Mo reluctantly took away his eyes, closing them to rest for a while. He slowly calmed down. Sui Mo's mind became clear as he calmed. This was what Pu Yao always did. If he really made the transaction, then there probably were countless traps waiting for him ahead. Calm, calm. He said it repeatedly to himself inside, furiously telling himself to not fall for Pu Yao's trick. This kind of self-brainwashing finally had some effect. He decided to learn the first move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, before he decided. Hearing this, Pu Yao refreshingly nodded, "Okay, I'll teach you the first move." Little Thousand Leaf Hands has 36 moves in total. The first move is one of the two most shallow and fundamental moves. Many of the other moves will be connected somewhat with these two moves. You have to be familiar with this one. Seeing Pu Yao act as though he was going to personally teach it, Zhuo Mo's mind became alert. Pu Yao always boasted to the sky, but Zhuo Mo had never seen him personally move. He instantly became excited now that the other was going to demonstrate his abilities. Great Thousand Leaf Hands, and Little Thousand Leaf Hands, were created by an ancient sky Yao. The aim was to go against nature. Pu Yao's voice was full of respect. When a Yao is born, the achievements it can accomplish are mostly set. A Yao seed is formed naturally and is the source of a Yao's power. This sky Yao was born as the most normal of the little Yao and became a sky Yao in the end. You don't really understand the Yao. What the Yao do is flow along with their natural order. It was only when that sky Yao appeared that people discovered it was possible to go against this natural order. From then on, Yao cultivation was split into with nature and against nature. You are learning that elder's moves today. Do not mar that sky Yao elder's name. Pu Yao's voice was stern and serious. Zhuo Mo gaped inside and was full of anticipation. From Pu Yao's explanation, it seemed that these two sets of methods had a great history. Watch carefully. As Pu Yao stopped talking, he raised his right hand. His right hand was long and snowy white, perfect in form, the bright red nails slightly curved and as sharp as a knife. He pointed with his index finger, the long crimson fingernail lightly sketching in the air. The movements were ethereal and gentle, flowing and pleasurable to the eye. The places that the blade-like fingernail passed, a streak of blood curved and squiggled. In a blink, a profound bloody character took form in the air. Zhuo Mo's pupils suddenly shrunk. He suddenly found that, starting from when Pu Yao's finger had started to draw, Zhuo Mo's own consciousness had gone slightly out of control, as though Pu Yao's finger held a strange magnetism. He jumped in fright, and hurriedly controlled his mind. Even though he was trying to control his consciousness, the majority of his attention was used to watch Pu Yao. Pu Yao's spiritual power flooded the bloody character. The character seal suddenly became full and glistening as though it was alive. Zhuo Mo felt as though he was suddenly jerked into an extremely strange world. There was no noise, no change. It was like time had completely stopped. Zhuo Mo felt that his heartbeat had stopped, his blood stopped flowing, his muscles and hair stopped moving. An unknown amount of time later, this strange state flew away as though it was a dream. Zhuo Mo finally felt shock. In a daze, he heard Pu Yao's slow and deep voice. The first move is called Void Pass. It does not halt time, it just maintains the laws that everything originally has, but at the same moment, it refuses all new laws, so you feel as though time has stopped. The two concepts are completely different. It only refuses change. The stronger your spirit is, the greater your control over your consciousness will be, and the larger the area you can control. However, if it is a strong change in the laws, you may not be able to stop it and the technique would break. Do not try to use it on other shouja, unless the difference in cultivation is very great. Then what's the use? Zhuo Mo heard himself ask instinctively. Hugh, you can use it on talismans. The Ling power on talismans usually is constantly flowing. The effect of interfering with that is very outstanding. Zhuo Mo had received such a great blow that he seemed to have lost his soul in the following days. Pu Yao did not hurry him, looking very confident. The fifth day, he finally thought it through and came to the sea of consciousness. Like normal, Pu Yao sat on the gravestone. His back to Zhuo Mo, he still knew that Suemo had come, a smug smile at the corner of his mouth. Suemo's eyes were clear. Just as he prepared to speak, he saw the gravestone under Pu Yao out of the corner of his eyes, and suddenly stopped. Chapter 179, Gravestone. Written on the gravestone were the words, "Do as he asks." Suemo had originally decided not to accept Pu Yao's tempting offer. Great thousand-leaf hands, and little thousand-leaf hands, enchanted him, but he still decided to refuse this transaction where it looked like he would benefit disproportionately. Pu Yao had not described the mountain physique in great detail, but Suemo understood that the reason he had cultivated this quickly to mountain physique was all due to the gravestone. The Vajra Profound Sutra was not an outstanding scripture. The reason it was so effective was those 5 adjusted phrases from the Jade Scroll. Even though Pu Yao did not say much, he was quite scornful of the mountain physique in his tone. However, Suemo could easily felt the great strength of the mountain physique. He had recalled that moment he broke through, savoring that feeling of strength flooding through his body. It was the first time he had so clearly tasted strength. Pu Yao's terrible reputation made Suemo unable to believe him. No matter how much he was tempted by great thousand-leaf hands, and little thousand-leaf hands, it was clear that what Pu Yao gave looked sweet, but it wouldn't taste sweet when he ate it. Vajra Profound Sutra didn't have anything profound and was exactly suited to Suemo's appetite. The fact he could unknowingly cultivate to mountain physique proved that he had talent in this area. Rather than gamble on the untrustworthy Pu Yao, it was better to persist with what he already had. He didn't want to think about progression to deeper stages. He believed that if he could reach the level he had experienced when he made the breakthrough, he would have some measure of protection in these troubled times. After thinking for a few days, and having finally made a decision, Suemo ran to the sea of consciousness to prepare to refuse Pu Yao. But to his shock, he saw the words floating on the gravestone. A strange feeling rose inside Suemo. It was like the gravestone under Pu Yao's ass was alive. This idea was truly too absurd, so absurd that even Suemo felt that he had thought too much these past days, and was having a delusion. The words on the gravestone were large and eye-catching. It wasn't a delusion. How about it? Pu Yao's unconcerned voice suddenly sounded next to Suemo's ear. Suemo's heart jumped. He glanced and saw the words on the gravestone grow faint. In a blink, the eye-catching words had disappeared. Was this gravestone really alive? Suemo thought and brushed off, I've thought for a long time. If this gravestone was really alive, then... Suddenly, he recalled when he had first met Pu Yao and how he fell into that unconscious state. When he had been muddled, he had heard an ancient and stern voice. He had assumed that it was Pu Yao. Thinking about it now, that voice was stern and authoritative, and was completely different from Pu Yao's seductive and enchanting mannerisms. He had overlooked this discrepancy before because there was no one except Pu Yao in his sea of consciousness. When the Vajra Profound Sutra had appeared on the gravestone last time, it hadn't caused him to question his assumption. Do as he asks. These words, other than living beings with brains, no matter if it was the most outstanding talisman, it could not say such words. He felt the gravestone was alive. Suemo's mind was furiously moving. Naturally, his speech could not keep up. This made him look especially dull today. Pu Yao furrowed his brows, and then... Suemo instinctively answered, I still have to think. He ignored Pu Yao, sitting down on the ground. In any case, the words on the gravestone had already disappeared. Pu Yao was slightly surprised. If Suemo entered the sea of consciousness, he should have decided. Had he just decided to change his mind now? He had interacted with Suemo for a long time. Suemo might be hesitant sometimes, but after he made a decision, he would never waver. The other was so stubborn and vicious, even he would gape. Why did he suddenly hesitate now? However, He would never have thought in his wildest dreams the gravestone under his bottom had gotten one over him. Suemo decided to think. The gravestone should be alive. No, maybe there was something alive under the gravestone. Thinking about it now, the Vajra Profound Sutra had appeared on the gravestone when Puyao had been meditating. This time, the gravestone was opposing Puyao right in front of him. Did the gravestone and Puyao have animosity? Puyao usually sat on the gravestone. Previously, Suemo had felt that Puyao was an undertaker. Thinking about it now, was more like Puyao was guarding it. Was there a powerful enemy sealed under the gravestone, and Puyao was so worried he personally guarded it? This guess was very rational. Suemo felt that even if it wasn't any great hatred between them, the relationship between Puyao and the gravestone was definitely not good. Otherwise, the gravestone wouldn't have opposed Puyao twice. Thinking through this, Suemo suddenly understood slightly what Puyao's aims were. Puyao needed the earth energy for something he did not state. Looking at it now, Puyao had offered this transaction directly for the mountain physique that Suemo had just achieved. Suemo suddenly didn't get it again. If Puyao and the gravestone really didn't have good relations, then Puyao could just stop him from practicing Vajra Profound Sutra. However, Puyao did not prohibit him from practicing Vajra Profound Sutra. If Puyao was targeting Suemo's mountain physique, he had enough skill and methods to just take that. Puyao wasn't a generous person. This person always wanted to get even. Whoever he held a grudge against, would quickly feel retribution from Puyao's machinations. Puyao would not let his enemies go, and give them time to recuperate. As to Suemo himself, he didn't feel he could affect Puyao in any way between the two enemies. The deeper he thought, the more puzzled Suemo felt. He threw away thinking about the relationship between Puyao and the gravestone. What he needed to consider was which choice was most beneficial for him. Puyao's promises were not trustworthy in Suemo's mind. Compared to that, he was more willing to believe the gravestone. The benefits from the gravestone's Vajra Profound Sutra were real and tangible. There was no spectacular description, but true power, and that was more likely to persuade Suemo. If he thought of Puyao and the gravestone as two people, his past experiences with Puyao were terrible, but his experience with the gravestone had been very good. Suemo felt dejected. This clearly was going to slow down his body cultivation progress, so why did the gravestone want him to agree? Was there? Suddenly, an idea appeared in his mind. Did the gravestone have a solution? Suemo suddenly became uplifted. It was possible. Otherwise, the gravestone certainly wouldn't want him to agree to Puyao's transaction. If the gravestone was not concerned with his cultivation progress, it wouldn't have passed him Vajra Profound Sutra in the first place. Suemo believed that any action had an aim. The gravestone had its own aims in passing on the Vajra Profound Sutra, but he did not know it at the moment. But since it had a goal, then it wouldn't easily let its previous efforts go to waste. Otherwise there would have been no reason to pass on to him the Vajra Profound Sutra. If the gravestone had just taught him out of sheer pleasure, even Suemo would not believe it. He couldn't guess the goal, but Suemo could judge what was more beneficial to him. He decided to listen to the gravestone. Having made his decision, he started to think how the gravestone would give the solution. Thinking of the Vajra Profound Sutra, and the words that had floated there, he decided to visit the Sea of Consciousness more frequently in the future. After thinking it through, Suemo stood and walked in front of Puyao. I've thought it through. Let's make the transaction. Your choice is very intelligent. Puyao's cold blade-like lips curved slightly. Suemo's caught a glimpse of this smirk and felt that Puyao's smile carried some unusual content, as though it proved some of his speculations. The first chapter of Great Thousand Leaf Hands, and the first 3 moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, in his hands, Suemo started to study them as though he was starving. Embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation was cryptic, and he still had barely progressed even now. The two spells had their own places that were hard to understand, but they were much easier compared to embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation. What was most surprising to Zhuo Mo was that Pu Yao was willing to personally teach little thousand-leaf hands. He took the chance to ask Pu Yao for clarification regarding the problems he encountered. He hadn't expected that Pu Yao to have changed his frugal attitude, and freely replied, and it could even be considered, very patiently. Zhuo Mo was amazed. Such a good chance, if he didn't use it fully, then he was an idiot. Zhuo Mo took the chance to go through everything he was usually puzzled by. After going through it all, he felt it was worth it even if there wasn't the two spells. This set of spells that Yao had about the spirit was more profound and wondrous than any jade scroll that he had ever read. It was like the difference between the cloud and earth. But making a transaction with Pu Yao meant one could never just simply enjoy. Accompanying it was always the pain of the flesh. Under Pu Yao's guidance, he quickly learned how to absorb earth energy from the ground. The earth energy of body cultivation and the art of earth energy, that's what Mo cultivated, shared the same name, but the two were completely different. The earth energy of art of earth energy was the energy nurtured from the soil, but the earth energy that Zhuo Mo took in right now was a kind of weighty and concentrated power. The only similarity between the two was they were both nurturing and heavy. But what the art of earth energy nurtured was ling plants, and what the earth energy of body cultivation nurtured was his body of flesh. An attentive Zhuo Mo found two reasons he could absorb earth energy. One was his body cultivation had reached mountain physique. The other reason was the Mo matrix. The Mo matrix that Pu Yao had carved onto Zhuo Mo's body was wondrous in allowing his body to communicate with the earth. He somewhat understood now why Mo would primarily cultivate their body. It was because they were born with Mo matrix, and were the children of the earth. When he was absorbing earth energy, it was so comfortable that he was intoxicated. Little by little, concentrated strength slowly moved into his body from his legs, nurturing every part of his body. He could feel the strength increasing in his body, a tranquility that he never felt before which was addicting. But the earth energy that he took in would be drawn out by Pu Yao in an instant, in a great form of torture. When the strength inside his body was extracted, his mind would blank for a short moment. When Zhuo Mo's mind came back, weakness and the lack of strength would make him feel that he had an incurable disease. A strong sense of dizziness and nausea destroyed his appetite and his interest in anything else. Each time Pu Yao drew out the earth energy, he only had one thought, to faint and sleep. However, he didn't sleep. He needed to cultivate. Chapter 180, Great Thousand-Leaf Hands. What Zhuo Mo cultivated first was the Great Thousand-Leaf Hands. The second half of the first chapter of Great Thousand-Leaf Hands explained how to form the Great Thousand-Leaf Hands. This Sky Yao was an amazing genius. He used the process of a plant growing to complete his spell. The first step of Great Thousand-Leaf Hands was to gather up the spirit that was scattered. This was not a problem to Zhuo Mo, he easily accomplished it. Next was to forge the gathered consciousness into seeds. This step was crucial. If one could not form seeds, they could not practice Great Thousand-Leaf Hands. The steps to forge seeds seemed to be very complicated, but when Zhuo Mo finished reading, a strange feeling arose. This was the Dan nurturing water method. The moisture Dan hadn't brought much tincture to Zhuo Mo, but he had studied the water method. The wondrous process of the Dan forming had left a deep impression on him, so when he saw the process of the seed forming, he instantly found similarities. He didn't know if this Sky Yao knew of the water method, but to have created such an amazing set of spells and to use a Dan-making method with spiritual power, he was in awe of the elder. Thinking about it, he twisted his mouth. Pu Yao said he was a Sky Yao, but they were both Sky Yao, so why was the difference so great? Pu Yao had taken out many kinds of spells, but he had never heard the other say that he had created any of them. Even more importantly, Zhuo Mo didn't think Pu Yao behaved like a Sky Yao. He was very suspicious that Pu Yao's Sky Yao identity was just him boasting. Knowing the water method, Zhuo Mo didn't have much trouble in forging the seed. A few hours later, a seed had been formed. This seed that Zhuo Mo had gathered all his consciousness into was the size of a soybean, expanding and contracting as though it was breathing. The most difficult part did not stop Zhuo Mo. As long as he persisted in practicing this set of spells daily, after 10 days, this seed would germinate. However, since all of his consciousness had been used to create this seed, it was like his consciousness had disappeared. This caused Zhuo Mo, who had relied on using his consciousness constantly, to feel extremely awkward. Without his consciousness, Zhuo Mo could not make Dan, could not forge, but what made him jump in fright was that he could not use the sky ring moon chime formation. Damn it! He had made such a fatal mistake. It seemed that he had been too proud these past days. Please, no one come in these next 10 days. To not cause terror in other disciples, he acted normally on the surface. Gongsun Cha delivered a pile of materials to him, all of it taken from the body of the blue-spiked crocodile that Zhuo Mo had killed. What was most attention-catching among the items was the hide of the blue-spiked crocodile and the 7 blue spikes. The hide was pristine. It was rare to see such a perfect blue-spiked crocodile skin. The hide of a blue-spiked crocodile was outstanding material to make Ling armor, and the price on the market was very high. What Zhuo Mo liked the most was the 7 blue spikes. The 7 blue spikes were rare water element materials, and they came from the same blue-spiked crocodile, which made them very appropriate to forge into a flying sword. Zhuo Mo's set of 5 sword essence swords needed 5 flying sword with completely different attributes. It would take luck to gather all 5. He decided to forge the 7 blue spikes into a set of flying swords suitable for him to use now. But when he thought that his consciousness was completely used in creating the seed, Zhuo Mo could only grimace. 10 days later, Zhuo Mo focused all his attention on growing the seed using the chant from the Great Thousand-Leaf Hands. After 10 days of continuous change, the seed was now the size of a goose egg, its outer shell a glowing porcelain. It was possible to see a curled sprout inside. Suddenly, Zhuo Mo detected the consciousness inside the egg moving. The outer layer of the seed broke. The outer layer was composed of consciousness and naturally would not have made a sound, but to Zhuo Mo it was like thunder. His body seemed to be struck by lightning as it vibrated. A tender sprout with a single leaf reached out of the broken shell. The leaf of the tender sprout was extremely small. It appeared like the palm of a person, with all 5 fingers. Everything in the surroundings flooded in clearly. This feeling of everything being in his grasp instantly made Zhuo Mo feel secure. Consciousness. Without him detecting it, Zhuo Mo found, to his shock, that his reliance on his consciousness had reached such a shocking step. The consciousness seemed much weaker than before, but as long as he had his consciousness, he could activate the sky ring moon chime formation, and he could guarantee his safety to some degree. Finally calming down, Zhuo Mo started to study his completely transformed consciousness. His spiritual power had all turned into this little tender sprout. The little hand that was as round and tender as an infant's was the only leaf on the sprout, but it was of great joy to Zhuo Mo. His mind moved and the leaf rippled, the 5 leaf fingers shaking. Quickly, Zhuo Mo discovered the trick to manipulating the leaf fingers. The 5 fingers on the leaf became even more nimble. Zhuo Mo was even able to control the 5 fingers on the leaf hand to do the finger motions of all kinds of spells. There was no sound when the leaf hand made the motions, the spiritual power and the Ling power was completely different. However, if he used finger motions with the leaf hand, its nimbleness far surpassed Zhuo Mo's own finger movements. He could control the leaf hand to complete many highly difficult and almost impossible finger movements. If he used his own fingers, he definitely could not do them. The 5 fingers on the leaf hands could lengthen and change shape according to his will. Zhuo Mo marveled at it. Zuemo played with the leaf hand until he was exhausted mentally. When he stopped, he noticed something he had missed before. The difficulty of controlling the leaf hand had become much easier than before. He wouldn't dare to even think about doing such delicate changes before. The area covered by his consciousness was much smaller than before. In the beginning, he had thought that his consciousness had weakened, but he understood after studying the leaf hand. At the moment, the root of the leaf hand was still inside the seed. The great majority of his spiritual power was still in the goose egg-sized seed. The amount of consciousness that had transformed into the sprout was only a small minority. If all the consciousness inside the seed turned to leaf hands, his consciousness would return to the same level as before. The broken seed was like soil right now, the leaf hand taking its nutrients from it to grow. In the span of one day, the tender leaf hand sprout grew a little bigger. When all of his consciousness turned to leaf hands, the speed the leaf hand grew would then be affected by the rate his spiritual power grew. Zuemo had a direct measure of the benefits that the great thousand leaf hands gave him. Even though the area covered by his consciousness was much smaller than before, but the clarity of the area covered by his consciousness was much higher. This benefit had a direct connection to dan-making and forging. Zuomo's control of fire had increased to another level. He had a strong impulse to forge a flying sword now, but he suppressed it. His consciousness had not recovered to its peak. The growth of the leaf hand was not fast, but it was steady. Zuemo wasn't in a hurry, he had many things to do. Like practicing the first 3 moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Zuemo had already learned the first 3 moves. Pu Yao teaching him personally did have some effect. These 3 moves were either exquisite or powerful, so he naturally would not let up, and continuously practice them. He needed to practice them to the point that he could execute them with a thought. However, he was far from that step. What he felt strange was the light at his fingertip when he drew the characters was a faint white light, and not the bloody red of Pu Yao. However, the effect of the completed move did not change. Pu Yao could not find a reason for this, so Zuemo, seeing it was not detrimental to casting the spell, threw it to one side. Zuemo still had not discovered the relation between this Little Thousand Leaf Hands and the leaf hands. It was night, the moonlight streaming down. A completely golden figure was at the edge of the black lake, his feet bare, and his legs apart. Zuemo was using Vajra Profound Sutra. Small strands of earth energy burrowed into his body through the soles of his feet. The earth energy was thin and felt cold. As it spread through his body, he felt unspeakably pleasurable. As the threads of earth energy entered his body, his muscles became even more strong and hard. Zuomo's body was filled with silence and vitality, just like the great earth. He opened his eyes. Glancing at his palms, a faint mountain peak tattoo could be seen. He shook his head. When Pu Yao sucked away the earth energy from his body, the mountain peak tattoo would once again disappear. Each day, he had to go through this. He had naturally found some trends. The mountain peak tattoo on his palms should be the symbol of the mountain physique. The stronger the body, the richer the earth energy in the body, the clearer it would be. Each time after he absorbed earth energy was the time it was most clear. A suction suddenly appeared inside his body. The earth energy that had just spread through his body was like a school of fishes that was attracted by bait, moving through every one of Zuomo's muscles and bones. An expression of pain came into Zuomo's eyes. It didn't need his control, his body instinctively rebelled, resisting the departure of the earth energy. It wanted to keep the earth energy, but the suction was so powerful that the earth energy continuously gathered there. Pu Yao took all the earth energy inside his body. Weakness flooded in, but he could not faint because of the pain. His body felt like it was being pricked by needles all over, each muscle and bone was in pain. Zuemo understood the reason. Absorbing earth energy, and then having Pu Yao drawing it away. In the entire process, Zuomo's body was like a man that had just gotten a treasure after struggle, but suddenly was robbed. It instinctively would defend and try to take it back. But since the enemy was too strong, in the conflict, his body was wounded. He had to go through this process daily. The pain could be imagined. It was torture. The damned gravestone. Each time, Zhuemo gritted his teeth as he bore the pain. At the same time, he repeatedly cursed the damned gravestone. In this period of time, he would run to the sea of consciousness when he had the free time. The result was that the gravestone didn't take any action after the words had popped up. Listening to the words, Zhuemo, who had been trusting of the gravestone, was furious. He finally understood. He had trusted the wrong person. No, he had trusted the wrong steel. Chapter 181, Familiar guests. Zhuemo's former habit had been to listen to the sound tablet every day. After arriving in Desolate Wood Reef, he would open the sound tablet whenever he was idle. This was not limited to just him. All the people on the Desolate Wood Reef were the same. Other than the flying sword messages the elders from the sect sent them, this was the only way they could communicate with the outside world. Even with Zhuemo's cultivation, he was unable to send flying sword messages to the sect over such a long distance. Every day, they could hear the bad news. It was like the Yaoma had suddenly become strong and peerless, the Xiuzhe were not a match for them and continuously lost. Each time he heard this kind of bad news, Zhuemo felt depressed. Theoretically, Xiuzhe had been hunting Yao for so many years in Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. While the Yaoma were like the livestock being raised in the Xiuzhe's backyard, but why did the Xiuzhe suddenly become so weak? He went to the lava lake. Inside the fire formation, a scorching flame covered the copper hoop and silently burned. After a long period of tempering, the copper hoop had become completely red like a piece of fire jade. Carefully inspecting the fire formation, Zhuemo's mood became slightly better. If it was tempered for a bit more time, this copper hoop would completely transform. He anticipated just how powerful this copper hoop would be after it was done tempering. After adding new jingsher to the fire formation, he climbed back out. The sunlight landed on his body and warmed him, it was so comfortable he wanted to groan. Now that everything on the Desolate Wood Reef had settled into a routine, other than having to endure the pain of earth energy every day, he didn't have any other frustrations. The Desolate Wood Reef might be isolated, but compared to the endless conflict inside the sect, it was paradise. Suddenly, he raised his head. Several black dots appeared on the horizon, heading at astonishing speed towards the Desolate Wood Reef. Xiuzhe. Zhuemo's heart shook slightly, but compared to the restlessness of the past, he was much more composed. With the sky-ring moon chime formation, even though his consciousness had not completely turned to leaf hands, but the leaf hands were so powerful that just the leaf hand of half his consciousness was more powerful in controlling the sky-ring moon chime formation than before. As long as the Xiuzhe that were coming were not Jindan, he was not afraid. 3 Xiuzhe had come. Seeing them speed over, Zhuemo's heart was slightly shocked. The 3 were not weak. However, when the 3 people flew close, he found to his surprise that he knew them. The 3 people were the Xiuzhe that had found him previously to process the inky black lotus seed. When the 3 came close to the Desolate Wood Reef, they had surprised expressions when they saw Zhuemo. The 3 quickly landed. Didn't think we would encounter Brother Zhui here, it really is fate. The red-robed man laughed forthrightly, his composure was extremely friendly. The other 2 tightly followed the red-robed man. Last time, having ran into trouble with them, Zhuemo knew they were not good people. In his heart he was wary. However, with his zombie face, no one could see what he was thinking. With Wukong's sword sect behind him as support, and the island having the big formation, he was very confident. Haha, yes, Zhuemo bowed with folded hands. If it had been in the past, the 3 would have been furious at this attitude, but Zhuemo's present status compared to the past was like the difference between heaven and earth. The status of Wukong's sword sect was rising in Sky Moon Jia. No one dared to provoke this battle-crazy sect, and Zhua Mo was also a core disciple of Wukong's sword sect. The red-robed man rejoiced that he had made amends last time, so their relationship wasn't too terrible. Otherwise, they would have a hard time today. He did not underestimate Zhua Mo due to his Juji cultivation. Putting aside Wukong's sword sect, Zhua Mo alone was a very dangerous entity. He naturally understood a bit about the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation, after having possessed the Jade Scroll for so long. When he saw Zhua Mo set up the formation in the Great Pine Pavilion, his shock had been indescribable. When he flew near Desolate Wood Reef and saw Zhua Mo, he understood that Zhua Mo definitely had put a formation over the island. However, this person was very experienced. He could bow with the circumstances and was extremely perceptive. He smiled and said, "Us three brothers wish to use your place to rest and recover for a few days. This is just a token of our appreciation, Brother Zhua Mo, don't refuse." The red-robed male handed over a small bag of jingsha. Zhua Mo slightly bounced it, and was very satisfied. 300 pieces of third-grade jingsha. As expected, this Xiuzha was good with handling relationships. That's fine. You can pick any residence here. If you need anything, just ask this little brother. Zhua Mo instantly became much warmer. The red-robed male released a breath inside. It was easy now that Zhua Mo was willing to take their jingsha. What he was most worried about was that Zhua Mo held a grudge over the incident of the inky black lotus seed. So before Zhua Mo had said anything, he had proactively and generously made the first move. Looking at it now, he was correct in doing so. Sorry for the disturbance. Right, I've also put a formation on this island. Please do not move around carelessly, Zhua Mo reminded them. The red-robed man thought, as expected. His mouth responded, "Many thanks for the reminder, Brother Zhua." Zhua Mo didn't waste words, he turned and left. When Zhua Mo disappeared, the three finally relaxed. The snarling brawny man snorted coldly, "Look at him act like that, I want to grind him to meat paste. Is this place safe?" The hawk-nosed man looked at his leader. "We'll rest here for a day and leave. Then go to Little Mountain Jia," the red-robed man said decisively. The snarling brawny man was still going on. The red-robed man glared at him, and interrupted, "Don't waste words. Quickly meditate. We don't have much time." The brawny man docilely sat and meditated. Taking in 300 pieces of third-grade jingsha, Zhua Mo felt very good. Business with no cost and all profit was really pleasurable. He recalled that the three seemed quite rushed, as though they wanted to leave quickly. He had previously received the Jade Scroll for the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. And had also gotten a gold forging chapter remnant. The gold method was more obscure, adding on that it was just a remnant scroll, Zhua Mo didn't put any effort in studying it. But one point was very clear, these three were clearly quite wealthy. Zhua Mo thought about making a transaction. He had a pretty good amount of golden crow fire on his hands and naturally wanted to sell it. However, the Desolate Wood Reef was really too isolated. He would have to fly for a long time to reach the nearest town. He was just a Juji. If the news got out that he possessed golden crow fire, he would be instantly surrounded and attacked if he stepped out of the Desolate Wood Reef. The best and safest way was to attract people to come to him. As long as he was on the Desolate Wood Reef, Zhua Mo was not afraid of any Mingmai. He didn't need to worry, no matter how big the attack force was. No power would actively challenge a battle-crazy sect like Wukong's sword sect. What was most worrisome was the small Xiuzha groups of 2 or 3 people. They were the primary bandits and robbers. After killing and stealing, they would hide in a place. Once the noise was over, they would come out. If he had to attract people to come such a long way to such an isolated place, he needed to have something to attract them. Golden Crow Fire would be one of those things. What Suemo needed to do first was pass the news out so other people knew they could buy Golden Crow fire at Desolate Wood Reef. His first target would be these three people. The red-robed male who had been meditating suddenly opened his eyes, a wary expression on his face. The other two quickly opened their eyes. Seeing the intruder was Suemo, the wariness in their eyes lessened slightly. Sorry to disturb everyone's rest, Suemo brashly sat down, no hint of apology in his voice. It's nothing, the red-robed male forced a smile. What does Brothers need to come so late in the night? Suemo didn't waste words, heading straight for the topic. This little brother has something good. Does everyone have an interest? The red-robed male first stilled, and then gave an interested expression. Oh, something that Brothers finds good, it must not be ordinary. Suemo handed over a jade box. Everyone, take a look. The red-robed man took the mini box and praised, such a fine jade box. Oh, such exquisite formations on here, I have great expectations for what is in the box. He opened the jade box. Inside the jade box, a golden flame silently burned as it floated inside the box. Golden Crow fire. The red-robed man shouted, the expressions of the two behind him changing as well. The other two stared fixedly at the Golden Crow fire in the box, the heat and desire not disguised at all. The red-robed male stared dazedly at the Golden Crow fire inside the jade box. After a beat, he sighed, Brothers is really skilled. I heard before that the Golden Crow pill was made by Brothers I didn't think that Brothers could also make such a pure Golden Crow fire seed. Such skill is really terrifying. Seeing the other did not show signs of wanting to attack, Suemo's heart slightly eased. The aura of murder that faintly exuded from the three people suggested that they were frequently involved in shady transactions. Suemo had been very worried that their greed would get the best of them. Even though he had been on guard, there was still danger if the three attacked together. He didn't know, but in this moment, countless thoughts had turned inside the red-robed man's mind. Don't underestimate such a little bit of Golden Crow fire. It had extremely high value. If one had something to exchange it for, the price wouldn't be just a little bit. However, when he saw Suemo was so serene, he felt that Suemo had measures in place. The red-robed male repeatedly weighed his options and pushed down his greed. The three knew each other very well. Leader didn't speak, so the other two knew that Leader didn't want to attack, so they had to control the killing intent inside. You are too complimentary. Are you three interested? Suemo said. The red-robed male said, how about a trade? This one doesn't have much tincture. Suemo instantly became alert and said, no problem. What he hoped for the most was to trade for something useful to him. On a place like the Desolate Wood Reef where even the birds didn't shit, there was nowhere to spend tincture. It was better to trade for something he could use. The red-robed male took out a pile of items for Suemo to choose from. Trading was a frequent transaction type between shoujo. Because there was no third party, what the transaction process tested was the knowledge of both sides and the price they had inside. The red-robed male had taken out a variety of items. There were talismans, materials, and jade scrolls. The other two also took out and displayed what they had. The three of them were very wealthy. Suemo's eyes instantly reddened, but his heart jumped. This pile of items was of great variety, and definitely not from one individual. He couldn't help but think about those shoujo that killed for treasure. The number of shoujo whose lives were ended by the hands of these three definitely wouldn't be low. Suemo refocused and started to pick. Chapter 182, Discovery. Flipping through the talismans and materials in front of him, Suemo rejoiced at his decision. These three really had a lot of good items. There were multiple fourth-grade materials, 2 or 3 fourth-grade talismans. The rest were things they didn't know the use of. Suemo wanted to take them all, but that was just a fantasy. Golden Crow fire was something good, but what he was offered was also good. In the end, Sui Mo picked 3 items. The first was a paper seal soldier. Sui Mo had a deep impression of the seal soldier from last time, the brute power and astounding presence it had. When he found a seal soldier in the pile, he was very happy. The grade of this seal soldier was higher than the one before. It should be 3rd grade. Sui Mo had only used a seal soldier once, he didn't understand very much about it, and could only make a general judgment. On the 3-finger-wide snowy white paper, the cinnabar seals were curving like earthworms, little bits of gold contained within the bright red cinnabar. The seals felt as though they were burned onto the paper. Holding it on his hand, it was very heavy, as though it wasn't made of paper but more like a piece of metal, strong yet flexible. The other was a 4th-grade blue icicle crystal. This blue ice crystal was of outstanding quality, entirely transparent without an impurity, forming a perfect icicle. When he took it out, a mist floated around the blue icicle crystal. Sui Mo had to channel Ling power to hold this blue icicle crystal. If he did not channel Ling power to his palm, his hand would have been frozen by the crystal. Seeing such an outstanding blue icicle crystal, the first thought in Sui Mo's mind was his 5 essence set of swords. If he forged this into a flying sword, it would be perfect for Xin Yen Sherbua's Ice Dragon Sword essence. The last was a talisman. When the 3 saw Sui Mo pick this talisman, they all had shocked expressions. It was a stick-shaped talisman that was severely damaged. It looked as though it should have 4 panels, but 2 of the panels were broken. None of the 3 recognized this talisman, they didn't even know where they had gotten the stick from. Sui Mo was willing to use a valuable choice to pick this broken stick, then it wasn't something ordinary. They were clear about that, but they didn't recognize it, so it wasn't useful in their hands. Also, no matter how good this talisman was, it was damaged, how good could it be? They were willing to trade it. The 2 sides easily made the transaction. Sui Mo gave the golden crow fire with the mini box to the other. The 3 all had happy expressions. Even though it was 3 for 1, but they felt it was worth it. The golden crow fire was one of the higher quality 4th-grade fire seeds. Fire seeds were rare in the first place. This fire might be a tiny flame, and was weak, but it was pure golden crow fire. As soon as it was imprinted, it could form a fire seed inside the body. While the blue icicle crystal was also 4th grade and it was perfect, but it still was not on the same level as this little ball of golden crow fire. But Sui Mo did not lose out. It was very hard to buy a 3rd-grade seal soldier on the market. There were not many seal xiu in Sky Moon Jia. Seal soldiers could save lives. A 2nd-grade seal soldier could face a Ningmai for a short amount of time. What about a 3rd-grade seal soldier? Sui Mo couldn't help but feel anticipation. No matter if it was the 3rd-grade seal soldier, or the perfect blue icicle crystal, they were all extraordinary treasures. But what Sui Mo put the most importance on was the damaged stick. The 3 opposite him did not know it, but Sui Mo recognized it. It was not a stick, but a damaged 4-flanged Vajragata. It was a talisman that Diana Xiu used. True Diana were rare in Sky Moon Jia. Sui Mo was very curious where they got a Diana talisman from. Diana emphasized cultivating the body and forming abhina. This was the first time Sui Mo saw a Diana talisman. However, he didn't pick this 4-flanged Vajragata out of curiosity but because he had discovered something else. His consciousness had become multiple times more sensitive as the leaf hand formed. When his consciousness had swept across this 4-flanged Vajragata, he had suddenly felt a hidden power come out of the Gata. This power was not strong, it could be considered weak. It didn't give off any pressure, was a peaceful but thick. This weak, harmless power, almost caused Sui Mo to lose his control of his consciousness. How could Sui Mo not feel shock? His own spirit was much stronger than normal Ningmai. His mentality was as strong as stone, unable to be shaken. Now that he had the leaf hand, in terms of strength, wasn't he multiple times stronger than before? It wasn't normal. In an instant, Zuemo understood the value of this four-flanged Vajragada. He did not hesitate and picked it. Both sides were happy. The next morning, the three bid farewell to Zuemo very early and flew towards the Jie River. Zuemo naturally wouldn't speak of letting them stay longer, but felt it strange. These three still clearly seemed quite tired, and had not completely recovered. Why were they in such a hurry to leave? Crossing the Jie River was not an easy matter. Even though he was puzzled, Zuemo did not have the time to care. He wanted them to leave as soon as possible so he could stop worrying and cultivate. The present desolate wood reef was like a paradise. The incident of the blue-spiked crocodile appearing and wounding someone reminded Zuemo that he may have set down an unprecedentedly large sky-ring moonshine formation, but the desolate wood reef wasn't small, and there naturally were many holes. Since he had discovered this, it was easy to deal with. He only needed to add some child formations to the sky-ring moonshine formation and it would seal the holes. Luckily, the main skeleton had already been built so the rest progressed quickly. After being fixed up, the desolate wood reef could be considered impregnable. Zuemo had not spared any of the beaches. After the incident with the blue-spiked crocodile, no other ling beast had managed to get into the island. Gongsun Cha became the most idle person. There were no beasts for him to work on. He was very depressed. Zuemo placed heavy importance on this shitty that had been certified for a jade medal and had comforted him. After making rounds, it was time to absorb earth energy for the day. Just having comforted Gongsun Cha, Zuemo needed to directly face an even harsher reality. Days were passing so slowly. Zuemo howled, feeling as though each day was a year. Come. Pu Yao raised his chin, smiling seductively and smugly. Zuemo asked the question he would ask every day, how many days left? Soon, soon. Pu Yao insincerely comforted him. Zuemo's body was dark gold, his pants rolled up and his bare feet struck deep in the soil. Threads of weak earth energy entered his body and flowed around, continuously permeating his muscles and bones. It was as though he was soaking in the water, unspeakably comfortable. But Zuemo did not dare to relax. His body was as tense as copper wire, nervous to the extreme. Countless previous experiences taught him if he allowed himself to sink into this comfortable state, the torture that would come next would become even harder and more painful to bear. The suddenly discrepancy would destroy a person. Zuemo's spirit had almost been wounded multiple times. After that, he didn't dare to let himself sink deeply into this pleasurable feeling. He was like a criminal that knew that he was going to his execution soon. He had delicious food in front of him, but it could have been cardboard for all he cared. It was coming. Strangely, he felt his heart relax. It finally came. The rest was very simple. One word, suffer. The earth energy that entered Zuemo's body became even tinier. That would cause the pain when they were drawn out to be even stronger. Zuemo's body uncontrollably trembled like dice. But his legs were like nails, hammered deeply into the ground. The hair-thin earth energy was slowly and forcefully sucked out of the depth of his body. They passed through his flesh, the pores in his bones, his channels. Zuemo tried his best to keep his mind clear. This was the only method he had found over time that could decrease the feeling of pain. However, in such a painful state, it was very difficult to enter a clear state of mind. People's potential was limitless. After being continuously tortured, Zuemo started to find some tricks. He tried his best to pull his consciousness away. It was best if it could wander outside his body. That way, no matter how much pain his body was in, he would not be affected. Relax, relax. His body was fiercely trembling, yet his breathing slowly calmed down. Embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation. Unknowingly, Zuemo entered an embryonic state. Pu Pu Yao exclaimed in shock, his action of drawing out earth energy pausing. In his bloody pupil, a thoughtful expression occurred. He seemed to have thought of something. Maybe. Mo, in his embryonic state, was like a spectator. He could see his body continuously tremble in increasing severity. For the first time, he did not feel pain at all. There was no joy. He just peacefully looked. He looked as his body started to become transparent, looked at the flesh under his skin and saw those hair-thin earth energies continuously break free of the control of his body and was forcefully sucked out. The entire process was displayed openly in front of him. His muscles started to grow larger in front of him, so he could look more clearly, look closer. Each fiber of his muscles uncontrollably trembled when the earth energy passed by. He just silently looked. It seemed he could look at more things. He was very peaceful, until he looked and saw a scene. This was. Suddenly, he seemed to understand something. As the idea popped out, it was like a pebble had been thrown at a peaceful pond. Everything in the surroundings suddenly became blurred and unreal as though it was rippling. Hiss. Extreme pain suddenly washed over him like a flood. Mo's mind had wavered as he left the embryonic state. Before his mind could steady, it was rushed by this unparalleled pain. He almost fainted. Damn it! Having left behind the embryonic state, Mo did not have any of the peace he had before. He gritted his teeth and arched his neck, trying his best to bear the shock of the pain. His mouth occasionally inhaled sharply. His eyes were red, like a bandit that had murdered many. If this was any previous time, Mo definitely wouldn't try to resist like this. The pain this time was far greater than any other previous occasion. It would be better to just faint. Then he wouldn't have to experience it. However, he definitely wouldn't give up this time. He decided to resist to the end. He didn't have the time to ponder what he had just seen, but he believed his own judgment. It was so painful it was pleasurable. So painful it reached his bones. He struggled to bear it. He wanted to laugh, roar with laughter. A gada is a mace, a weapon used by one of the gods. In depictions, the gada is literally a stone on a stick. This particular weapon has flanges, so it is a four-flanged mace/gada. Search Vajra weapon, and imagine one end of it set on a stick. Chapter 183, Black Wind Bandits. Mo's hands were on his knees as he allowed his sweat to drip to the ground. His chest was heaving like bellows, his rough rushed breathing short and sharp. He didn't have the energy to talk. He still wanted to smile, wanted to laugh. His brain numbed from pain, he gradually recovered his strength. The joy in his heart diluted the exhaustion of his body. What he had seen when he looked, he almost did not believe it. The earth energy spread throughout his body, and in the end into his blood and flesh. When Pu Yao drew it out, the thin earth energy was like a rainstorm of needles that once again passed through his blood and flesh. In other words, Mo might not have been able to keep the earth energy, but the flesh of his body was bathed twice by the earth energy. The stimulation caused by the earth energy as it was drawn out by Pu Yao was much stronger than when Mo absorbed the earth energy. Even though Mo could not keep the earth energy, his physical body was being continuously tempered like a piece of metal. The attribute of the earth energy, nourishment, could quickly replenish the damage that Mo's body received during this beating. As long as he could keep bearing it, after his body had gone through such a forging process multiple times, wouldn't it be strong? He didn't know if the gravestone had told him to agree with Pu Yao because of this. In any case, he wanted Pu Yao to do it more. In his perspective, this was a method of cultivation, even though it really was a matter of luck. Even if he understood the trick to it, but without Pu Yao, it would be impossible. Mo didn't have any way of drawing out the earth energy in his body. Mo controlled the exhilaration in his heart, and pretended to be exhausted. Like a bag of sand, he smashed onto the ground like wet mud. He definitely could not attract Pu Yao's attention. Zhuo Mo understood Pu Yao very well. That Ren Yao would be excited upon seeing his sorry state and would be very willing to do this again. However, if the other saw his joy, Pu Yao would definitely stop. In the endless ocean, a large group of Xiuzhe were flying, all kinds of colors crossing the sky. Head, those three would definitely run towards Little Mountain Jia. Should we keep pursuing? The one speaking was a tall and thin person. The almond-yellow Taoist robe hung on his body like a rag that could be blown away by the wind at any time. He was called Wei Rong, and ranked third in this crowd of people. Go. Why don't we keep going? The large man at the front stared with his bell-sized eyes. Wei Rong couldn't help but shrink back. The big man at the front was called Zhang Hao. His personality was as explosive as fire, his eyes full of viciousness. Not just Little Mountain Jia, even if it's the edge of the world, I won't let them escape. The big man's eyes flashed with viciousness. They dare to trick me, I'll skin them. Yes, 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 Wei Rong hurried to agree. Those three really had the best luck, finding a secret realm. Judging from their actions, they seemed to have gained a lot. Another man with one eye and a lame leg laughed darkly. He was called Zhuo. In this group, he was second in rank. Good luck. It's our good luck. Greed flashed through Zhang Hao's eyes. He shouted, brothers, if we want to be rich, then let's get motivated. A secret realm. After finishing this job, we can retire. What do you say? Kill them. Head, don't worry, meat that's reached our mouths, can we let them escape? Kill, kill, kill. Riches moved people's hearts. To this crowd of bandits that lived through robbery, nothing could move them more than this. This crowd of people exuded killing intent, the exhaustion of their long flight lessening. Zhuo glanced at the head in admiration. Head might look straightforward, but just a few of his words instantly stirred the desire for battle in everyone's hearts. He was very skilled. A secret realm. Just these two words, if news spread, they could create countless conflicts in Sky Moon Jia. Zhuo couldn't help but admire the luck of the three people who had found a secret realm. They had accidentally stumbled upon the three and found some traces. However, they were just a bit too slow. When they rushed over, everything good inside the secret realm had been completely swept away. In reality, even without those treasures, the value of the secret realm was extraordinary. However, to Zhang Hao and the others, it didn't have any value. They were wandering bandits, moving like the wind. If they put down roots, their enemies would quickly come to kill them. Everyone understood this, so they did not hesitate in pursuing in the direction the three had gone in. This team of wandering bandits was about 70 people. Its size couldn't be considered large, but they had great offensive power. They called themselves Black Wind. So everyone called them the Black Wind Bandits. Each member was at least Juji. 5 were in Ningmai. The newest member had been a part of the group for 3 years. They were very good in their cooperation. Adding on that there were not many members, they were very experienced. It was hard to track their movement, many experts that wanted to kill them were not able to. Head Zhang looked straightforward, but in reality, he was careful and cautious. They had lived very freely. In these 2 years, the situation had become more unstable. Their lives had gotten even better. Those big sects were hurriedly consolidating their own power for their survival, and didn't have the time to bother with them. It wasn't just the Black Wind Bandits. The present Sky Moon Jia was not as peaceful as in the past. Murders and fights were multiple times more frequent than 3 years ago. This messy situation seemed to point to an even more chaotic future. It was very rare to see Xiuzhe that traveled alone. The result was that the market rate to hire a sword xiu had exploded, and reached a terrifying level. Correspondingly, the price for all kinds of production xiuzhe had dropped. Many people were facing unemployment. A very strange situation appeared in the markets. The prices of all kinds of materials were sky-high, but the formerly busy Ling gardens were now barren. Everyone was concerned. Everyone was waiting for big sects like Wukong's sword sect to finish their reorganization and steady the situation. The Black Wind bandits had taken advantage of the chaos and grew larger by taking a few big jobs. Right now, all of them were very wealthy, but greed was not so easy to satisfy. As they changed their talismans, the overall power of the Black Wind bandits had risen. This allowed them to gain enough power to steal from more powerful Xiuzhe, even managing to target some of the minor powers. But even the rich little powers could not compare to a secret realm. They stopped on the little island coming up. One of the subordinates pointed at the little island that could just be seen. He was the one most skilled in tracking of this group. Go see, Head Zhang unhesitatingly ordered. A group of people flew towards the island. Chen Yuqing pointed at the infant worms in the beast pool, full of pride and anticipation as he said, Xixiang, this is the first batch of worms. He didn't like conflict and fighting. His main goal in life was to accomplish something in the field of animal husbandry. He had sunk into the beast pool in the last period of time. All of his attention was on pondering the abilities of the beast pool. Much of the content in the Jade Scroll was not complete and there were many parts he did not understand. However, he was not discouraged, but full of motivation to keep studying harder. A person that came from grassroots would always be very careful with any opportunity they got. The harder it was to understand, the more excited he was, because this meant that it was more profound. Low-level Xiuzhe were willing to trade anything to get a profound skill or spell, including their life, because they had nothing. Chen Yuqing forgot to eat and sleep as he studied. As expected, he did discover some things. This batch was only 6 infant worms, and it was the first successful batch that he had raised up until now. It was no wonder that he was so excited, and couldn't wait to show off his results. What's the mother? Suomo asked as he looked at the 6 infant worms. The infant worms were about the thickness of his pinky, wrinkled, and gray-white. They were not very attractive. Suomo was slightly disappointed. These infant worms looked too normal, without any hint of quality. However, he also knew that this beast pond was profound and hard to understand. Chen Yuqing's shitty was just a zhuji, and it would definitely take time before he would produce good results. He could not hurry this. Chen Yuqing did not detect Suomo's disappointment at all. He said excitedly, I used 3 kinds of Ling butterflies for the mother. Dong Fu poisonous moth, blue pupil butterfly and rain mark butterfly. Suomo's face was puzzled, what are these Ling butterflies? Chen Yuqing didn't dare to laugh at Suomo and he hurried to explain, Dong Fu poisonous moth is a normal kind of poisonous moth produced in Dong Fu. It is 2nd grade, and can release a certain amount of poisonous powder. It is an average Ling butterfly. Blue pupil butterfly and rain mark butterfly are 3rd grade Ling butterflies. Blue pupil butterflies are born with a pair of blue pupils that can see through illusions of 3rd grade and under. The rain mark butterfly is a water element butterfly, skilled in water element spells. The highest grade rain mark butterfly I've ever seen could use 3 water spells. The one I used is of average quality, and can only cast 1 kind of water element spell. Oh, it sounds very complicated. Suomo gaped, nodding his head. Yes, this is all too deep and broad. Chen Yuqing sighed. Suomo hadn't heard of any of the 3 Ling butterflies before. The bunch of Ling butterflies that Chen Yuqing had introduced to him before, he had completely forgotten all of them. He thought that his decision to throw the beast pool to Chen Yuqing shitty was really too wise. If it was him, wouldn't he be having a headache? Thinking about it that way, Suomo's disappointment at the ugliness and average nature of the infant worms instantly disappeared. He smiled at Chen Yuqing, saying, don't rush. We can go slowly. Maybe we can produce a few fine ones. Then we'll strike it rich. Chun Yuqing knew Shi Xiang was comforting him. The rate that fine ones appeared was very low. He had studied for so many years, but he had only ever produced 2 Ling beasts that could be considered to touch the border of fine. It was these 2 semi-fine Ling beasts that allowed him to qualify for the jade medal. Don't worry, Shi Xiang. Before, Yuqing could not say it, Chun Yuqing said seriously, but with the beast pool and such a profound method, Yuqing would definitely bring good news to Shi Xiang. Zuo saw the mood was too stern and wanted to say a few words to loosen it up when he suddenly raised his head to look into the distant sky. A long way off in the sky, a crowd of black dots was flying at high speed towards the desolate wood reef. Zuo's gaze focused. After his consciousness had turned into leaf hands, it was abnormally sensitive. He could clearly feel the ferocity of the other's approach. The murderous intent was like a dark cloud, a suffocating presence sweeping towards him. Chapter 184, Mantis and Oriole. Without a word, Zuo brought out the Wukong flag. The black metal mast carried an inky black flag, the words, Wukong, written with sword-like strokes that almost flew off the cloth. As the Wukong flag was revealed, sword essences rippled as though an invisible hand disturbed a still puddle of water. The air in the surroundings became dense and cold, with turbulence flowing under the surface. Zuo saw the Xiuzhi come in even closer, and his hand started to rapidly cast all kinds of spells. Light suddenly formed on the Wukong flag above his head. Countless sword energies of all colors flew out from the flag, like fish of different colors. They swirled and circled around Zuo. With the sword energies as protection, Zuo's confidence increased. Wukong flag was the token of the sect, forged together by multiple Jindan. What was sealed inside were sword energies from all types of Jindan experts. Limited by his cultivation, Zuo could not use the full power of the Wukong flag, but the sword energies of Jindan experts were still incredibly dangerous to Ningmai. Luckily, there was no Jindan expert in this group. Zuo stared at the group of Xiuzhi that was coming closer. He couldn't help but be slightly nervous. This was the first time he was facing so many people by himself. The other side clearly had ill intentions. However, he might be nervous, but there were not any stray thoughts in his head. His mind was abnormally clear. As soon as the other side made a move, he would not hesitate in unleashing a thundering attack. The Xiuzhi in the air stopped their flight, facing off from far away. Zhang Hao's face was hesitant as he stared at the black flag. Zuo Han's features were twisted, his one eye showing deep hatred, his hands fisting and cracking. Wei Rong's face was pale, his bamboo-like body shaking. When the other people saw the flag, it was like they had seen a ghost, deep terror on all of their faces and their bodies uncontrollably shrinking back. In one moment, the procession of more than 70 people sank into a strange silence. Head, this little brother has followed you for 10 years, you know my temper. This little brother doesn't want to drag everyone down. This brother's revenge, this brother will personally take it. Head, don't stop me. Zuo Han's voice seemed to come from the netherworld. Everyone's expression changed upon hearing it. The cowardly Wei Rong was white. Some time before, the reckless Black Wind bandits had coincidentally encountered Wukong's sword sect, and it had been the group led by Wei Sheng. They were instantly defeated and heavily wounded. Zuo Han's eye and leg had been taken by Wei Sheng. Wei Sheng's void sword scripture was somewhat complete now. His sword essence would permeate the body. Zuo Han had tried all the Lingdan but could not heal it. His hatred of Wukong's sword sect was deep to the bone. He had constantly thought of ways to seek revenge, but the only realistic way was to encounter Wukong's sword sect disciples that were alone and kill them to vent his frustrations. He hadn't thought he would really encounter Wukong's sword sect disciples. Staring at the big flag, Zhang Zhao did not speak. He could naturally see the extraordinary nature of the flag. This disciple was undoubtedly a core disciple of Wukong's sword sect. If he really killed this Wukong sword sect disciple today, Wukong's sword sect would not rest. Having almost been killed by Wukong's sword sect, how could Zhang Hao not be angry? But he recognized the situation. With the strength of the Black Wind bandits, going to seek revenge against Wukong's sword sect was seeking their own death. In the eyes of Wukong's sword sect, the Black Wind bandits were nothing. As long as they didn't go to challenge them, Wukong's sword sect would not remember them. But if he let Zhua Han go off to see revenge alone, what would the other brothers think? Zhua Han was one of the oldest and original members of the Black Wind bandits, and had followed him for 10 years, making numerous and great contributions. If he was so frigid, it would cool the hearts of the other brothers. If the hearts moved apart, then the Black Wind bandits were over. Also, a secret realm. The secret realm was like a heavy weight on his heart. The balance in Zhang Hao's heart instantly tilted. This was the Jie River. If they killed this disciple, and traveled far from Sky Moon Jie, no matter how powerful Wukong's sword sect was, they would not be able to do anything. As long as this band of brothers was together, they could live anywhere. He never even thought that he could be defeated. It had been such a long time, and the only person who came out was a Zhuji. No matter how strong Wukong flag was, if his group couldn't kill one Zhuji, then they could go back to drinking milk. A pity about the flag. He knew the extraordinary nature of the Wukong flag, but he didn't dare to take it. Sect tokens like these would have their own special imprints in them. Holding it was akin to telling other people where they were. Wukong's sword sect would only need to send one Jindan to kill them all. Zhang Hao inhaled deeply, viciousness flashing through his eyes. He said hatefully, "What are you saying? Our group, after all this time and struggles, we are one fucking family. Wukong's sword sect might be strong. We can't kill them. But we can't be weak. We were humiliated so badly last time, if we can't even deal with a baby, can it be any more of a fucking embarrassment?" Zhang Hao looked around. Shame was on the faces of many. Yes, Wukong's sword sect was powerful, but if they had surrounded a disciple, it would be embarrassing if they escaped. Zhang Hao's tone relaxed slightly. "Where is this?" "This is the Jie River. As long as we pass the Jie River, it will be Little Mountain Jie. Wukong's sword sect is strong. Can they go through Little Mountain Jie without any care?" "Haha, we can go hide." "Can they find us?" The other people nodded when they heard this. Zhang Hao continued to pour oil on the fire, full of persuasion. "It is a secret realm. Brothers. Once we catch those three, we're rich. With Jingshi, where can't we go? We'll be bosses wherever we go." With the work of a few words, the desires of the group had been stirred by Zhang Hao. Viciousness shine in everyone's eyes, killing intent brimming. They wanted to immediately level the desolate wood reef. Feeling the killing intent become increasingly heavy, Zhua Mo knew a big battle could not be avoided. He didn't have any thoughts of avoidance. He didn't know what the group of people was, but seeing they had no fear of the Wukong flag, they were definitely not normal Shouja. 1 against 70, he knew how low his chance of victory was. But there was no place to escape on this endless ocean. The shitty that he had taken along were all producers. If he abandoned them, they would only have one outcome. He broke off all his thoughts. Staring at the Shouja brimming with killing intent in the sky, his courage rose. Wasn't it just a fight? Gu will chip off all of your teeth until the blood flowed. He felt his blood boiling, a desire for battle rising in his chest. Just as he was going to activate the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation, he suddenly made a sound of surprise. Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. The disciples of Wai Kong Sword Sect were gathered together, all of them with bloodless faces. The only one that was somewhat calm was Gongsun Cha. Even Chun Yuzhang's complexion was slightly pale. Where did this crowd come from? They dare to disregard our Wukong Sword Sect. Aren't they afraid the sect will pursue them? Chun Yucheng's voice was trembling. Gong Sun Cha snorted, this group is definitely wandering bandits. I just don't know which bunch. Pursue? How do they pursue? If they run to Little Mountain Jia, the sect will have no way. What should we do, what should we do? Chun Yucheng was mindless. Gong Sun Cha shuffled and spread his white palms, all up to Zhuo Shixiang. Zhuo Shixiang is only one person, no way about it, submit to your fate. About 10 miles from the desolate wood reed, in the middle of a white cloud, a bunch of people were also staring at the desolate wood reef. Ha, now here's something to see. Who do you think will win? The yellow-faced man said. At his side was a black-clothed Xiuzhe. His body was withered like dry firewood, his eyes dark. It was Gue Feng from the sword test conference. On the other side was an indifferent, short wiry-haired, Changheng with a copper ring at his collarbones. The other people present both feared and were in awe of these three, unconsciously keeping their distance. Gue Feng's eyes were eerily green, his cultivation much deeper than before. His voice was raspy. He isn't in Ningmai. The implication did not have to be said. He still didn't know the origins of the yellow-faced man. He only knew that the yellow-faced man called himself Bo Feng. He cultivated the little ghost sword, which was an extremely obscure sword scripture. Even though he had good talent, but the little ghost sword scripture had been incomplete at the start. It was hard for him to keep progressing further. At the time, Bo Feng had given him a scripture called Nine Ghost Nail Curse. This scripture that he had never heard of before caused him to have no hesitations about joining. But when he saw Changheng, he was slightly shocked. He speculated that Changheng should be in a similar situation as him. However, he didn't know what scripture Bo Feng had given Changheng. He didn't really care about this group of Zhuji. Actually, he felt there was no use for them. With him and Changheng, this group of 36 Zhuji really had no use. The problems the three of them could not solve, what good would adding on these 36 Zhuji be? They still won't be able to solve it, and would even drag down their speed. However, it had been Bo Feng who had gathered these 36 Zhuji. Gue Feng wouldn't make trouble for himself by broaching the topic. What do you think? Bo Feng turned to ask Changheng. Changheng said calmly, Zhuo Mo wins. You have such confidence in him, Bo Feng smiled with surprise. Bo Feng's appearance was not attractive, he was extremely normal, but his composure and actions had a presence that could shake people's hearts. Hearing this, Gue Feng did not agree. This was not the sword test conference. Zhang Hao and his group of Black Wind bandits were all extremely nasty and terrible people. This was a battle to the death. A Zhuji, managing to block them for a few hours was enough to be proud of, much less victory. But he did not voice it. He was still very wary of Changheng, there was no reason to cause conflict for such an unimportant topic. His strength had grown over this period of time, Changheng's growth most likely had not grown any less than his. Bo Feng did not linger on the topic. He looked at the two sides facing off in the distance, his voice serene. No matter which side wins, we need to get the detailed information about the secret realm from Zhang Hao. The authority in his voice could not be resisted. Everyone's hearts shook. Chapter 185, The Power of the Golden Crow Fire. The two sides didn't even exchange greetings. Zhuo Mo didn't need to ask to feel the enmity from the other side. The Black Wind bandits did not find it necessary. He was just a Zhuji, so did they need to waste such words? Even though he knew that Zhuo Han desperately wanted to get revenge, Zhang Hao still decided to send a few people to test out the waters. The abilities of the Wukong flag would be known after an encounter. Zhang Hao had gone through countless battles and knew very well he could not be careless. The enemy was a core disciple of Wukong's sword sect. It would be normal for him to have one or two life-saving talismans. These life-saving talismans were usually bestowed by the elders of the sect and were incredibly powerful. If they were not careful, they would stumble where they shouldn't, a common occurrence. Since their own side had the advantage, there was no need to take unnecessary risks. Sua Han was a very good subordinate. He wouldn't be able to bear it if Sua Han was tricked. There were 70 people in the Black Wind Bandits. 5 of them had reached Ningmai. These were the backbone of the Black Wind Bandits. Those under Ningmai could easily be replaced, especially in such troubled times. He called 5 Zhuji subordinates forward. Even if the opponent had life-saving treasures, his cultivation was still limited. The other would be at a disadvantage with 1 against 5. Battle quickly, he said, and then turned to comfort Sua Han, old brother, don't be impatient. After they catch him, if you want to skin him or suck out the marrow, you can do whatever you want. Sua Han said gratefully, many thanks, head. Zhang Hao roared with laughter, don't be so courteous. Old brother has made many contributions over these years. This is just a minor matter. The 5 people did not dare to be rash. Light was flashing on the flag above the other's head, and suggested it wasn't anything ordinary. If it was 1-on-1, they knew that they were not a match for disciples of a large sect. But if it was 5-on-1, so they had enough confidence. To be able to survive in the Black Wind Bandits, especially as a Zhuji, they had to learn how to cooperate with their fellow bandits. This was the reason that the Black Wind Bandits had been able to remain free all these years. They cooperated very well among themselves. This showed up very clearly when several groups were fighting. Their best method of fighting was to use many to fight against the strong, and use many to fight against many. The disciples of large sects focused on individual power, that meant that they didn't have any advantages when they were fighting in groups. The 5 Shouja came slowly, spreading out in specific positions that complemented each other. Suemo stared at the 5 people. He was not nervous. The sword energies around his body were flying in patterns. Of the 5 Shouja, 3 were sword shio, 1 person had a black banner, and 1 had a chain sickle. The cultivation of the 5 were not much different compared to Suemo, roughly in the higher stages of Zhuji. The person holding the black banner waved it, and an inky black cloud headed toward Suemo. The 3 sword shio also attacked. 3 flying swords of different colors turned to 3 dashes of light, transforming in the air as they headed toward Suemo. A cold smile floated on the mouth of the Shouja holding the chain sickle. The black sickle swung in his hands and rattled rhythmically. The chain was the thickness of a thumb, with a waterdrop-shaped spike at the end of the chain. Traces of blood could be seen on the black chain. It could be seen this weapon had drank a lot of blood and was a violent weapon. Suemo naturally would not slack off. The Wukong flag above his head landed on his hand, and he waved it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless sword energies flew out of the body of the flag and headed towards the black cloud. The sword energies easily passed through the black cloud. The black cloud rumbled and returned to normal in the blink of an eye. Suemo tightly stared at the black hood. Of the 5 people, the black cloud and the person holding the chain sickle felt most dangerous to him. The threat posed by the 3 sword shio was actually the smallest. None of the sword shio had comprehended sword essence. In Suemo's eyes, their sword energies were insubstantial. The feeling this black cloud gave Suemo was somewhat similar to the blood fiends in the sword cave, dark and gloomy. His mind was clear, the 3 flying swords were aiming at his chest. Suemo turned and dodged the 3 flying swords. He still stared at the black cloud, his mind thinking furiously about how to deal with it. The person wielding the banner was hiding behind everyone else. It wasn't realistic to attack the other. The Shouja holding the chain sickle did not move. He was like an experienced hunter, patiently waiting for Suemo to reveal a weakness. The black cloud was not fast, but its scope was very vast and would not be easy to dodge. The sword energies that passed through it had not stopped it at all. A difficult thing. Suo Mo's head swelled. Far away, the attitudes of those spectating such as Bo Fong were idle, but when Bo Fong saw the black banner, he had a startled expression. Black blood banner? People still make those? He looked closely and then realized, so it is incomplete. No wonder. What is the black blood banner? Gue Fong suddenly asked. In the 9 ghost nail curse that Bo Fong had given him, it had mentioned the black blood banner, but it was a general description. An obscure talisman. Made by collecting yin and dirty substances. It can corrode talismans and flying swords very effectively. Bo Fong did not conceal anything, explaining honestly, most of the shouja that use this kind of talisman cultivate ghosts and yin spirits, but it is not easy to forge one. What that banner used is black dog blood. The grade is too low, the forging method is incomplete, so the power is limited. Gue Fong listened carefully. He might cultivate a sword scripture, but it was also related to the area of ghosts and yin spirits. Most of the shouja that practiced these arts were roaming shou, but among the sword shou it was not considered an honorable practice. He normally did not have anyone who could teach him. Bo Fong glanced at him and said carefreely, however, if one doesn't know how to deal with it, this is difficult to deal with. The other members of the Black Wind Bandits were at ease. In their minds, this battle was already decided. Zhang Hao smiled at Sua Han. That guy's Darkeen banner is really good. It is always effective when used. Pity that it is hard to forge. If we can get a few more, our strength will increase by much. Sua Han's mood had relaxed. His face also easing off. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "Head is too greedy. It is lucky that our troop had even one. Other than our troop, I've never heard of another in our profession that had one, and Head wants us to have multiple." Ha ha. Zhang Hao laughed, "That's true. I'm too greedy." He was very proud inside. The Black Wind Bandits did not have many members, but it did not lack for talent. They were some of the best of their profession in Sky Moon Jie. Just as Sui Mo was frantically moving, he suddenly heard Pu Yao snort coldly, "They take something as trashy as this out. So embarrassing." He then said disdainfully to Sui Mo, "You can't even defeat trash like this, you truly embarrass me." Sui Mo instantly didn't feel good. Looking at the situation he swore, "Stop wasting words, and tell me how to deal with it." The methods of the Diana Xiu are very effective. Diana Xiu. Seeing the black cloud fly closer, Sua Mo was speechless. There was no time to deal with Pu Yao's riddles. "Oh, I forgot you don't understand. You only have a half-assed, vitra profound scripture. It's useless," Pu Yao drawled. It was deliberate, this guy definitely was doing it deliberately. Sua Mo's teeth itched in anger. "Oh, I remember, this thing is afraid of fire." Sua Mo's mind jumped. Afraid of fire, that was too easy. What he didn't lack right now was fire. A flip of the hand, and a mini box appeared in his hand. Sua Mo's action attracted everyone's eyes. What was that? Amidst everyone's curiosity, Sua Mo threw the jade box at the black cloud. The shouja holding the black banner snorted coldly, Ling power flooding into the banner. The black cloud became even thicker and darker, like sticky black ink. A nauseating smell instantly spread. His Darkeen banner had been forged using a secret method that he had found in the remnants of a scroll. It was always successful at corrupting talismans. Seeing the other throw out a jade box, he smirked inside. What the Wukong flag had sent out were all sword energies. His cloud was intangible, so they had not been affected it. "I'm not afraid you will use talismans, but I'm afraid that you won't use talismans." His eyes twinkled as his prey fell into his trap. The little jade box flipped through the air, attracting everyone's eyes. Sui Mo had used a large amount of force. In the blink of an eye, the jade box flew into the black cloud. The shouja with the chain sickle shook his head, slightly regretful that he wouldn't get the chance to attack. He knew his fellow's black banner very well. No matter what kind of talisman, if it was touched by the black cloud, they would become scrap. Many Ningmai had been tripped up by this nondescript black cloud. As the jade box entered the black cloud, it was quickly corroded. The surface of the box was raven black, and a white rotten pattern appeared. The Shouja holding the banner gave a smug smile. Suddenly, a sword energy entered the black cloud and accurately struck the jade box. This was. The smile of the banner-holding Shouja suddenly froze. Pia. The corroded jade box was incredibly fragile, and turned to dust when struck by the sword energy. A pure golden flame fought its way out of the jade box. Golden crow fire. Hiss crack crack. The black cloud was like a ball of oil that was suddenly lit up in a blaze. The little wisp of golden crow fire grew dramatically. The fire spread with astounding speed from the center of the cloud outwards. Terror formed in the eyes of the banner-wielding Shouja. Watching from far away, Bo Fang's eyes lit up and he couldn't help but gasp, "Golden crow fire. It's actually golden crow fire. Golden crow fire." Changhang and Guifeng's hearts shook. They stared at the black cloud, not daring to move their eyes away. Their subordinates were all puzzled. What's happening?" Zhang Hao stilled. He could make out golden light through the black cloud. Was it that the talisman the little baby had thrown out not affected? Zhua Han also couldn't help but stare at the black cloud. The two looked at each other and found their heated gaze. A talisman that was not affected by the black cloud was very rare. That was definitely a very good talisman. The golden light inside the black cloud became increasingly brighter. All of the Shouja noticed the abnormality of the black cloud. However, their thoughts were the same as Zhang Hao and Zhua Han. No one noticed the deep hopelessness on the face of the banner-holding Shouja. A wisp of golden fire finally burned through the black cloud. In the blink of an eye, the thick tangible surface of the black cloud was covered in burning flames. In the sky, an enormous golden ball of fire hung like the sun. The golden fire was entirely pure, a domineering presence spreading out and sweeping like the wind. Ah! The heart-wrenching wail caused everyone's hearts go jump. The banner-holding Shouja had become a person made from golden fire. He only had the time to wail before both he and the black banner turned to dust. Everyone was shocked. Chapter 186, Sword Formation. Golden Crow Fire, 4th grade, formed by gathering the essence of the sun, had extremely young and strong attributes, and was one of the sources of all fires in the world. Golden crow fire was usually created through being nurtured by some special kinds of ling grasses such as the sky sunflower. Golden crow fire could occasionally be found at the very center of the flower. Supposedly, some sects had secret methods that could create golden crow fire, but due to the fire being overly young and domineering, it was extremely damaging to the body. It could leave hidden weaknesses, and so secret methods were needed. It was one of the fire seeds people dreamed about. It could even absorb and merge with many other kinds of fire seeds, increasing the grade of the fire. On the market, golden crow fire was a treasure that had high demand and no supply. Even the smallest wisp would be worth 1,000 jingshe. People usually remembered how beneficial it was as a fire seed but usually forgot about the heat and domineering of the fire itself. It was 4th grade. Zhua Mo was also stunned by the broad expanse burning in front of him. He had assumed that it could damage this black cloud. He had never thought that the power of the golden crow fire was so terrifying. What he didn't know was the golden crow fire was an extremely strong yang attribute, and was the exact counter to something yin and corrupting as the black cloud. This was why the result was so exaggerated. The black cloud twisted in the air like a little mountain, pressing down on everyone. But when it turned to a ball of fire, such an enormous ball of fire, it was even more of a blow than the black cloud. It came without any warning, or rather, they hadn't made any preparations. Everyone was frightened. Zuemo was only stunned for a moment before he woke. Such a good chance, if he wasted it, he would be punished by heaven. After being hammered in the big sword essence formation, his grasp of battle rhythm had increased. He channeled Ling power silently. The sword energies were like swimming fish that soundlessly flew out of the Wukong flag and soundlessly neared the remaining 4 people. There was a variety of sword energies sealed inside the Wukong flag of all attributes. It could be seen just how vast of an area each elder had grasped. The flag also sealed 3 great moves that could be constructed from these sword energies. This was the most important thing about the flag. The original intentions of Pei Yuan Ran and the others in forging the flag had been these moves, that only Jindan experts could use. This way, Ningmai disciples could release Jindan level attacks and save their own lives at a crucial time. Pei Yuan Ran originally had not intended to give Zuemo the Wukong flag because he had been considering that Zuemo basically could not use the full power of the flag. Later on, he couldn't withstand the fire of Shifeng Rong's fury, so he had to part with it. Zuemo couldn't use any of the great killing moves sealed inside the Wukong flag. He didn't have enough Ling power. He could only release those sword energies and not activate the killing moves. But so what if he couldn't? It might have been the pressure from the life or death situation, but Zuemo's consciousness was abnormally clear. The shock caused by the golden crow fire disappeared in an instant. The little leaf formed from the great 1,000-leaf hands, imperceptibly waved. The sword energies flowed silently like water. He found that he had dismissed this Wukong flag before. There were sword energies of all different kinds. Even though they could not form killing moves, but he could easily control these sword energies. Wasn't this the best tool for setting a formation? Instantly comprehending his resources, his mind was clear and still. The situation had turned. The position of hunter and prey silently changed. The golden ball of fire burned, a peerless domineering presence spread in ripples. It attracted everyone's gaze, the 4 people closest to it were not an exception. Under such a bright light, everything had lost color. The 4 people did not know that sword energies had silently surrounded them. The sword energies slid like they were on ice, without a sound, and changed positions. At the beginning, the changes in position between the sword energies was slightly raw, but quickly, the changes in position became very precise. All of this happened in an extremely short period of time. The 4 people had still not recovered from the ferocity of the golden crow fire. The only person who detected something was the Shioja who had the chain sickle. Some clarity came into his eyes. He glanced at Zuemo holding the flag, his heart relaxing slightly. When he looked in the surroundings, his expression suddenly changed. He called an alarm, careful, the sword formation had formed. His shout became the prelude to the closing of the net. The sharp and intimidating sword essences sliced at every bit of space. The air within their vision was shattered in an instant. Pew pew pew. 3 pillars of blood shot high into the sky. Before they landed, their bodies were ground to powder by the sword energies that wove and sliced. Bam bam bam. The 3 sword shio seemed to explode in midair, countless bits of blood and gore flew outwards in all directions. The first person to detect the attack was the Shioja who held the chain sickle. He was very experienced, and had gone through hundreds of battles. He didn't retreat, but charged. A black light flew from his hand, the sickle headed straight for Zuemo. The water drop spike arched like a poisonous snake, dancing so his sides were covered. As the sword energies hit it, sparks flew. Ding 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 ding. The sword energies continuously hit the lengthening chain, like it was a chain made of sparks. The tip of the sickle gave a howl that shocked people's souls. The chain sickle was made out of an unknown material that was able to cut out a path through such a dense rain of sword energies. The speed was very fast. The edge pointed straight at Zuemo. Impact. The hook had hit the other person. He was jubilant at this surprising outcome. His original intentions had been to defend for a while so his fellows would save him. He hadn't thought he would make impact with one attack. Was the other too busy controlling the sword energies, and could not split his attention? That wasn't right. The sword energies that suddenly lit up alarmed the black-winged bandits who were still in shock. Right after, they saw something they would never be able to forget. Countless sword energies formed a grand net. The three fellow bandits had been ground down and exploded in an instant. The only surviving fellow, they were all very familiar with. The chain sickle on his hand had taken countless lives. However, the black blade was now strangely striking at an empty space, several dozen zhang away from the enemy. The jubilation on their comrade's face made their hairs stand on end. Illusion. Zhang Hao's pupils shrunk. He controlled his impulse to charge over. His eyes were very experienced. He clearly saw the other had used the sword energies to form a formation. Now that the formation had been activated, charging in was too dangerous. His gaze suddenly darkened. He knew that his remaining subordinate would not escape death. As expected, a gigantic sword made from sword energies heavily struck at the chains that covered the other. The chain that was not easily damaged by flying swords shattered. The Xiuzhe that did not have the time to dodge was instantly bisected. All five had been lost. Bam! The golden ball of fire coincidentally collapsed at this time, sparks flying in all directions. As the bright golden sparks rained down, a thin and weak youth holding a black flag several times his size, was standing proudly under the five-colored sword energies. No one spoke, no one dared to move. The pupils of all the black-winged bandits couldn't help but shrink. All the underestimation, all the disdain, all their certainty, it all seemed so foolish now. On the sky above the desolate wood reef, there was only the sound of the wind. Wei Rong, who was shaking like dice, suddenly shrieked, I remember now, he's Zuo. He is Zuo. The shriek was ear-piercing in this deathly silence. Far away, Bo Feng's gaze recovered its clarity. Even he had been dazzled by that grand kill. Other than cultivation, Zuo has improved very much compared to last time, he praised, his formations are even harder to predict now. If his cultivation could increase at this rate, he wouldn't be any less outstanding than Wei Xing. Gui Feng's mouth was open wide, but he could not make a sound, shock dominating his eyes. The strength that Zuo had just displayed was not just a little bit higher than at the sword test conference. Even though that Wukong flag was very strong, but Zuo's skill was worthy of praise. His control of the sword energies, his skill at setting up formations. It was completely different than before. What surprised Gui Feng the most was Zuo's practiced composure and calmness. He remembered how tender Zuo had been at the sword test conference. In the short span of half a year, the Zuo in front of him had become a completely different person. Cheng Heng did not speak, but his eyes seemed to light up, full of desire for battle. Zuo, so you are Zuo. Zhang Hao's expression was very ugly, his voice pressuring. He had thought it would be a soft fruit, but it turned out to be a hard nail. He had heard the name of Zuo before. After the sword test conference, this name had spread through all of Sky Moon Jie. He knew the little brat that looked slightly weak was a core disciple of Wukong's sword sect, but he had not expected it to be Zuo. He remembered now. In the rumors, Zuo was most skilled in formations. He couldn't help but glance at the desolate wood reef under them. There was no movement there, but since the person here was Zuo, there definitely would be countless formations down there. Bandit groups like the Black Wind Bandits disliked situations like this the most. What they were skilled at was ambushes and robbery. What they were least skilled at was attacking heavily guarded places with full frontal assaults. In Zhang Hao's eyes, the little island below was like a hedgehog. If it was any other time, he definitely wouldn't attack such a place. But right now, he tasted what it felt like to be unable to get off his high horse. Other than Zhua Han's vengeance, 5 subordinates had been killed in front of him. If they left like this, their overall motivation would be greatly impacted. Also, he hurt. The 5 subordinates had all been Zhuji, but the one with the banner and the other with the chain sickle had been Xiuzha with special spells. Other than the 5 most important backbones, it was very difficult to find replacements for these Xiuzha who had special spells. He didn't hurt for the death of the 3-sword Xiu, but his heart was in pain at the death of those 2. He stared at Sui Mo, his eyes red. His temper was vicious and explosive. Now that he had tripped up so heavily, would he rest? Even more, since he knew the person in front of him was Sui Mo, he was clear of the importance of this little island to Wukong's sword sect. Such an important place, they would definitely have stored plentiful resources. He quickly decided. No matter what, they had to take down this little island. Chapter 187, 2 hours the wind howled, the mood above desolate wood reef became even tenser. The black wind bandits' killing intent spread. Sui Mo sighed to himself. Killing the 5 people just now had not created fear, it had provoked their viciousness. Very quickly, he threw these thoughts to the back of his head because the other side had began advancing forward. Without a doubt, the next fight would be more fierce and cruel. Sui Mo felt the pressure suddenly increasing. He didn't have the luxury to hold back. Raising his hand he cast a light downwards. Sky ring moon chime formation. A crescent moon rose low into the sky. Countless thin strands fell from the bright moon, covering the entire desolate wood reef. On these thin strands, light rings of various sizes hung like wind chimes. But this crescent moon was dyed with an orange-red tinge. The moon gave off a warm orange glow, when previously it was as clear and smooth as flowing water. Sui Mo sighed. Just a little bit more and the Buddha sound hoop would have finished. The tempered Buddha sound hoop would definitely have increased its power. It was a pity that it had just missed by a little bit, but just this little bit caused the power of the Buddha sound hoop to be 1 level lower. The situation in front of him did not allow him to continue to temper it. There were still more than 60 people on the other side. More than 60 Xiuzha, and 5 of them Ningmai. The pressure they gave him was unparalleled. The only thing that could compete with the present situation was the Great Sword Essence formation. The big formation that was created by 5 Jindan together. Naturally it would not be ordinary. However, when he was inside the Sword Essence formation, he knew he didn't have to worry about his life. In terms of presence, this group was not as intimidating as the Sword Essence formation, but this group of people wouldn't blink as they killed him. They really would take his little life. What should I do? Sui Mo asked Pu Yao. Kill. Pu Yao was simple and crisp, his bloody pupil shining. It was now that Sui Mo felt this guy had some of the mannerisms of a Sky Yao. However, while the aura was present, but it wasn't useful at all. How do I kill? Sui Mo felt he was an idiot to ask Pu Yao, who was also an idiot, but he couldn't resist asking. Was it out of nervousness? As expected, Pu Yao looked at him like he was looking at an idiot, one by one, of course. He now really wanted to ask Pu Yao, how do I kill them one by one? But he suppressed it. He really did not like Pu Yao's gaze. Pu Yao thought and then suddenly said, if you can kill them all within 2 hours, I will teach you another move of, little thousand-leaf hands. 2 hours, kill them all. This time, it was Sui Mo's turn to look at Pu Yao like he was looking at an idiot. Do you think I'm an idiot? 2 hours, you think I'm killing pigs? They are, just say if you will do it or not. Pu Yao lazily said, none of the killing intent he had just shown was on his face. Do it. Once he said it, Sui Mo felt he was really an idiot. 2 hours, to kill that dense patch of people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 67 people, 5 Ningmai, 62 Zhuji. He was Juji. Okay, after Pu Yao did this, the last bit of nervousness in Zhuo Mo's heart had dissipated. Strangely, he felt anticipation and excitement. It was as though he really yearned for the battle that was going to come. His body heated up and his Ling power was abnormally lively. Was it that he had stayed too long with a pervert like Pu Yao, and became slightly perverse himself? The sky ring moon chime formation covered the entire desolate wood reef. Zhuo Mo's figure was inside it, flickering in and out of sight. Zhuo Han's eyes were cold and filled with hatred and killing intent. However, he forcefully suppressed it. He was waiting for Head's order. The reason that the Black Wind Bandits had remained free for such a long time was their outstanding battle strategy, and it was their best protection. Even though he was second in command, and even though the hatred was deep in his heart, he still suppressed it. Zhang Hao's pupils shrunk into a line, a bloody light flashing from his eyes, cruel and vicious. At this time, he had thrown all other thoughts to the back of his head. No matter how many concerns he had, once he decided to fight, there was only one thought in his mind: kill them. Kill. A bellow like the howl of a wild beast came from his throat. Kill, kill, kill. The eyes of everyone else were completely red, leaving behind only pure killing intent. The 67 people split into several parts, and like thin flows, they headed towards desolate wood reef from different directions. Just 67 people, but the vicious and brutal aura they exuded would alarm anyone. Bo Feng, who saw this scene, suddenly lit up, and praised, "I had originally thought that the Black Wind Bandits had an inflated reputation before. Looking at it now, they are even better than the rumors. To create this kind of presence, even Wukong Sword Sect, which has been so powerful recently, cannot do it." One Xiuzha couldn't help say, when the Black Wind Bandits met Wukong Sword Sect last time, they suffered a huge loss. The subordinate had followed Bo Feng for a time and knew that Bo Feng would not be discontent due to differences in opinions, which was why he dared to speak. Bo Feng smiled and shook his head. "It's not the same. Wukong Sword Sect's strength is in their individual experts. What the Black Wind Bandits are strong in is their combined ability. The power of the group cannot replace experts, and the experts cannot replace the group. In small conflicts, the effect of experts is very evident, but if it is battles of thousands of people, then the use of experts begins to lessen. How can there be battles with thousands of people?" That Xiuzha objected. "There aren't any now, but that doesn't mean there won't be in the future," Bo Feng said meaningfully. The 67 Xiuzha attacked at the same time. Their presence was astounding. Light flashed across the sky, flying swords and talismans were dancing. Zhang Hao's plan was very simple: to use brute force to break technique. It was unwise to go head-on against a fortified target, but the present situation was special as the only person on the other side that could resist was Zhuo Mo. No matter how strong Zhuo Mo was, when he faced the attacks of 67 Xiuzha, there would have to be times where he would slip. Formations were set up on the island. If they landed in them, that would give Zhuo Mo a chance. It was better to use brute force to break the formation from the base. Having lost his greatest defense, Zhuo Mo would be like a lamb waiting for slaughter. Zhuo Mo felt terrible right now. Damn it! This group of people rained everything down on his head. 67 Xiuzha furiously attacking downwards at the same time, without regard for Ling power. They looked as though they would only rest when desolate wood reef was leveled. This group was also very smart. They only bombarded desolate wood reef from a distance and did not come any closer. Seeing all the flying swords and spells come down on his head like rain, Zhuo Mo became stubborn. "Alright, GE will see just how much Ling power you have to waste." The Wukong flag was heavily inserted into the ground. The sword energies that swarmed around his body silently entered the sky ring moon chime formation. Zhuo Mo jumped up from the ground and started to pass around the desolate wood reef. He was like a fireman, continuously watching over the big formation. The sky ring moon chime formation he had set up was unprecedentedly large, reaching 216 child formations. Adding on that, he had continuously been fixing the holes recently, even though it was not impenetrable, but it still managed to survive the bombing of the Black Wind bandits. He knew as long as he could make it through this round, the initiative would instantly change sides. 67 Shouja, not all of them could be offensive Shouja. For example, Zuohan had 100 poison fan that could release all kinds of dark poisonous miasma, but in a fight of strength, it couldn't have much of an effect. The greatest threat came from strength-based Shouja like Zhang Hao. Zhang Hao's flying sword was very unique. The body of the sword was extremely wide, like it was a shovel or an axe. What he walked was a road of strength. The body of the sword was covered in a layer of red light. Each attack was like a heavy axe breaking a mountain, weighing 30,000 caddies. Zuomo felt that Zhang Hao was the greatest threat out of all the people. Each of his attacks would make Zuomo's heart jump. The hair-like threads of the sky ring moon chime formation would be blown into a mess, causing the rings of light on the threads to chime. After being tempered for such a long time, the Buddha sound hoop had an additional attribute of yang and dominance. Before, the chimes had been clear and ethereal. The present chimes were deep and explosive. Even the echoes seemed to carry heat and flame. Zuomo was still relatively calm. After being alarmed the first few times, he found that the sky ring moon chime formation was still untouched. He finally remembered that during the sword test conference, the 72 child formation sky ring moon chime formation had endured a great ordeal. At that time, the number of Ningmai that had been in the formation had been more than right now. If the others wanted to ruin the 216 child formation sky ring moon chime formation through brute force, that was a big delusion. He knew the other side would quickly realize this. At that time, the fight would truly start. Zuomo raised his head to look at the sky. Throughout the threads, he could clearly see the mania and hatred on the faces of his enemies. He lowered his head, his eyes becoming slightly cold. He started to take out formation discs from the ring, and threw them inside to form various formations. Using the sky ring moon chime formation as a cover, he secretly threw out many formation discs. At this time, he didn't have any thoughts of keeping anything back. The formation discs in his ring flew out of his hands like they didn't cost money. He wanted to turn the desolate wood reef into a hunting ground. A hunting ground full of traps. Gong Sun Cha and the others had gone to hide in the cave with the lava lake. This was the safest place on the desolate wood reef. The lava cave was deep under the ground. Zuomo had set up countless formations around it, and it was the most important of all important grounds. So when they heard sound filtering from the outside, all of the people inside the cave had worried expressions. Chun Yuqing sighed, "What a pity that we cannot help." These made many people unconsciously clench their hands. They were all production show. However, they were young and it was the age to be rash and brave. They also knew what their fate would be if this group broke through the big formation. What wandering bandits needed were people that could fight. Production Shouja, who had no offensive strength, would be killed at the earliest convenience. Gong Sun Cha was the most composed of all the people. He laid on the ground and said unconcernedly, "Don't worry. It won't be so easy for them to break through Zhuoxixiang's big formation. I also feel that Zhuoxixiang is much stronger than before." Has everyone forgotten the blue-spiked crocodile? Once the words came out, everyone was uplifted. They thought about the multiple brute force impacts between Zhuoxixiang and the blue-spiked crocodile. Confidence grew. Their unsecure hearts settled down. In the sky, the attacks slowed down. Zuomo raised his face to look and then bent down to keep setting up. An absurd idea suddenly came into his mind. 2 hours, there wasn't much time left. Chapter 188, Entering the Formation, the Black Wind Bandits lack strong offensive Shouja. It isn't quite possible to break through Zuomo's formation defense style, Bo Feng said while shaking his head. In Zhuo Mo's hands, this kind of turtle battle strategy is really used to the extreme. Unless they have troops specializing in offense, it's impossible to break through the turtle shell. With such a gigantic formation, Ningmai would find it difficult to destroy in a full frontal attack. Gui Feng lowered his head. He thought about Zhuo Mo's formation defense style at the sword test conference that had caused a headache for everyone. He didn't have many good ideas about how to resolve the formation defense style either. Unless they could attack before Zhuo Mo had set up the formation. Once Zhuo Mo had completed the formation, the chance of victory was almost zero. The formation defense style was also called the turtle style. It was called the strongest defense below Jindan. It wasn't that other people hadn't thought of mimicking Zhuo Mo's formation defense style. But when they tried it themselves, they discovered the formation defense style was not so easy to make. How to quickly set it up was one of the most important problems. Looking at the present situation, Zhuo Mo's formation defense style had reached another stage. His efficiency at setting up and his skill had risen dramatically when compared to the sword test conference. Other than that, the combination of formations needed to be decided in an extremely short period of time. To control the formations, it also demanded a strong and large consciousness. After studying it in depth, everyone found that the formation defense style was not as simple as imagined. Even the process of Zhuo Mo battling Chaoan was repeatedly taken out and studied. This was one of the rare battles in recent years where the weak won over the strong. The rich battle strategies involved in the match was enough for every Xiuzhe who studied it to marvel. Is there really no way? Another Xiuzhe asked. Bo Feng said deeply, if you encounter Zhuo Mo, do not give him the chance to set up formations. But he has already set up formations, the Xiuzhe looked at the desolate wood reef. Then I don't have any way, Bo Feng spread his hands and said honestly another Xiuzhe couldn't help but say, there's so many people. If they just charge in, they could win. In their eyes, the difference in strength between the two sides was too extreme. 1 versus 67, and there were 5 Ningmai. Zhuo Mo himself was just in the stage of Zhuji. Even if he had the help of the formation, if this many people charged in at the same time, Zhuo Mo basically would have no chance. If it is anyone else, I would also feel the same, Bo Feng said patiently. To the Zhuji under his command, he never skimped on guidance, but if it is Zhuo Mo, I don't think so. What formation defense style, that's just the surface. What Zhuo Mo is greatest at is strategy. He is most skilled at using all the factors at his disposal, and then turning them into advantages for himself. Even if he didn't have these factors, he could also create an environment advantageous to himself. He is a born strategist. On this point, Wei Sheng is not as great as him. His subordinates all had expressions of understanding. Bo Feng added, of course, maybe, to Zhuo Mo, this is a method born out of helplessness. He needs to use other methods to compensate for his flaw of cultivation. If Zhuo Mo heard Bo Feng's analysis, he would definitely agree. If one had Ling power, who would do all this? Just slice with the sword. He admired Wei Sheng Shixiang very much on this point. Bo Feng then gave his conclusion, from when they started to attack the Desolate Wood Reef, they became the reactive side. Desolate Wood Reef is very important to Wukong Sword Sect, but why did Wukong Sword Sect only send Zhuo Mo alone? Because they are very clear that Zhuo Mo, who is able to create the formation defense style, would be able to create a safe place by himself if he is given enough time. The Black Wind Bandits bully the island because there is only Zhuo Mo. What they fail to realize is that Zhuo Mo's offensive abilities might not be strong, but if he is used to guard one island, he is more than enough. Zhuo Mo's growth has exceeded my predictions. Zhuo Mo would only ever fight in an environment that is advantageous for him. The Black Wind Bandits are not weak. To use force to overcome technique, they may have a chance at victory. This will be something to see. His speech made the 30-something Zhuji under him enchanted. Everyone was in Zhuji, but the difference was just too great. Then if a Jindan expert came, Some people were still not convinced. Clearly, he was very discontent about a Zhuji being so arrogant. If a Jindan expert came, no one can stop them. Only Jindan can stop Jindan. This Zhuji could not say a thing. Zhang Hao also realized that they could not break this turtle shell, even if they kept on bombarding the island. The Black Wind Bandits were still wandering bandits in the end. They moved like the wind and lacked strong offensive moves. Zhang Hao's greatest wish right now was that everyone would have a talisman like the sky-flipping seal, picking it up and throwing it down heavily. However, wandering bandits that traveled quickly like the Black Wind Bandits usually scorned talismans like the sky-flipping seal. They were too difficult to transport. The threads coming from the orange moon shook. The rings of light chimed endlessly, but they did not break. Zhang Hao was clear about the power of his flying sword. Even among the Ningmai, those that could receive his sword head-on would be those top Ningmai experts. He was the first one to save Zhua Han from Wei Xing's hands. Wei Xing might have previously been second to Gu Rongping, but Gu Rongping had steadily faded out of view. Wei Xing had quickly overtaken Gu Rongping as the most promising youth of Sky Moon Jie. Having gone into seclusion after the sword test conference, Wei Xing's cultivation had skyrocketed. Everyone guessed he had found a method to break through to heart-turned sword essence. His amazing battles afterwards almost proved everyone's speculations. From following Xian Yan in the beginning, to quickly leading his own team, he battled in all directions, and never lost. No matter if it was in reputation, or strength, he became the first expert in Ningmai. Zhang Hao was not as good as Wei Xing, but if the Ningmai of Sky Moon Jie were ranked, he would belong to the rank of experts. However, he was usually low-key, so he was not famous. But the formation in front of him made him not know what to do. Zhang Hao had experienced too many tribulations. He did not panic upon meeting a standoff. In the end, Zhuo Mo was just one person. No matter how strong the formation was, it needed people to control it. A formation with someone controlling it and without were two completely different things. Formations might have many wonders, but in the end, it was still an outside aid. After living through so many days on the blade's edge, he clearly understood that the true substance of a battle was still a matter of the two-side strength. This was why true sword shio experts did not like using other moves. Because they themselves had enough power, and they had absolute confidence in their own strength. Zhang Hao might not be a sword shio expert, but he had the same absolute confidence in his group of people. He suddenly whistled, and everyone instantly stopped. Kill! Zhang Hao charged into the formation first, Zhua Han following tightly after. The other Black Wind Bandits did not hesitate, all of them charging into the formation. Bo Feng, who saw this from a far side, Zhuo Mo has the initiative. Having the initiative doesn't mean he is able to win, someone said. Bo Feng smiled and nodded, that's true. But we will know after watching. As Zhang Hao entered the formation, he found the scene in front of him change. He was suddenly situated in the wilderness, empty and desolate. An orange moon hung in the sky, exuding a warm light. As expected, the other had some skill. He praised inside. If possible, he would definitely have tried to get Zhuo Mo to join the Black Wind Bandits. However, he knew it was just a delusion. The other was a core disciple of Wukong sword sect. Would they even properly look at this group of wandering bandits? He refocused and pushed down this unrealistic thought. This was not the first time he had to solve a formation, but it was the first time he had faced such a powerful formation. Even though he didn't understand the formation, but he was still confident because the opponent's cultivation was one stage below his. For Xiuzhe, one stage meant a difference in the basic attribute of strength. He also had a small secret, a secret that no one knew, heart-turned sword essence. His mountain opener sword scripture had been cultivated to the stage of heart-turned sword essence. Holding the flying sword covered in a red light, he slowly proceeded. The red light became even brighter, his body covered by a seemingly tangible red shield. A five-colored fan appeared on Zhua Han's hand. In the blink of an eye, a multicolored mist surrounded him, his figure gradually disappearing in the rainbow mist. Wei Rong's face was pale, his tall and thin figure shaking in the wind like bamboo. He stared around in terror, wanting to find his fellows, but there was no one in his sight. Zhuo Mo's eyes were serenely cold. He was completely prepared, the Ling power of his body abnormally lively, but his mind empty and calm. The prey had entered the hunting grounds. His figure slowly became muddled and then disappeared. His first target was Zhang Hao. Take the head first. Once he got rid of Zhang Hao, the other people would become headless, and his chances of ambush would be greater. Zhang Hao's Ningmai cultivation meant that he could not face him head-on, but Zhuo Mo had his own methods. Covered by the red light, Zhang Hao did not know that Zhuo Mo had locked onto him. However, even if he knew, he wouldn't feel fear, but would be even more excited. Suddenly, he stopped, and waved the heavy sword in his hand. A patch of red sword energies left his sword. The sword energy was extremely large, like a thick red light curtain that blocked in front of him. Ding ding ding. Several sword energies hit the red light curtain and bounced off. Zhang Hao smirked, not slowing in his steps as he headed in the direction of the moon. The Wukong flag was a good talisman, and it was powerful. It was a pity that Zhuo Mo's cultivation was too low, and could not release its true power. Sword energies of this degree could kill Zhuji, but it wasn't enough for Ningmai like him. He didn't know if this was controlled or just an attack of the formation. He strode towards the crescent moon. He looked to be walking slowly, but it meant he was not easily lost in the illusions. He flooded his legs with Ling power. Each step would be like a large hammer. A large hole would appear with each step. All illusions would be shattered. He was taking advantage that Zhuo Mo's cultivation was not as high as him. This method was stupid, but it was extremely effective. Every formation would have a formation core. The core of the formation was the control center. If he could destroy the formation core, the strongest formation would still collapse in an instant. Zhang Hao steadily headed towards the moon. All kinds of sword energies along the way were blocked off. He used Ling power to seal his ears to shut off the sounds that disturbed one's mind. He only focused on walking forward. The sounds that could attack were all blocked by his heavy sword. The more he walked forward, the more confident he grew. Formations were very useful, but the difference in the two sides' power was too large, it was useless. He had taken the initiative again, that you're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.